They say heroes are born in fire. I say they're forged in rain-soaked parking lots when a child's scream pierces the thunder. Tonight, you'll witness how a single father with a haunted past became the shield between innocence and brutality, how one moment of courage ignited a war that would shake a city's underworld to its core. This is the story of Evan Turner, the man they called Echo. Stay until the end, and comment your city below so I can see how far this story of redemption travels across the world. The storm had been building all day, the kind that turns city streets into rivers and makes smart people stay indoors. Evan Turner wasn't trying to be smart. He was just trying to get groceries home before his daughter's bedtime. The fluorescent lights of Save Mart cast sickly yellow pools across the cracked asphalt as he pushed his cart toward his 15-year-old sedan, its paint more rust than blue these days. Thunder rolled across the sky like artillery fire, and Evan's jaw clenched involuntarily. Old habits, old memories. He forced his breathing to slow, counting the bags as he loaded them into the trunk. Milk, cereal, Sophie's favorite strawberry yogurt, the cheap kind, because that's what single fathers on a repairman's salary could afford. The rain intensified, fat drops that exploded on contact, soaking through his worn jacket within seconds. He was reaching for the last bag when he heard it, a sound that cut through the storm like a knife through silk. A child's scream, not the playful kind, not the tantrum kind. The kind that makes your blood run cold because every parent knows the difference. The kind that speaks of pure, primal terror. Evan's head snapped up, his body already moving before his mind caught up, that old training kicking in like muscle memory. Through the curtain of rain, he saw her, a small figure in white, running full tilt across the parking lot, her dress plastered to her thin frame, dark hair whipping behind her. She was running toward him. He dropped the groceries, cornflakes, and canned soup forgotten, and took 3 steps forward. The girl slammed into him with the force of desperation, her small hands clutching his soaked jacket, her face tilted up to his. She couldn't have been more than 8 years old. Her eyes were wide, pupils dilated with fear, tears mixing with rain on her cheeks. But it was the blood that made Evan's heart stop. Crimson streaks across her white dress, already diluting in the downpour but unmistakably red. "Please," her voice was raw, breaking on the word. "Please, you have to help. They're hurting my mom. They're going to kill her." Evan dropped to one knee, bringing himself to her eye level. His voice came out steady, calm, the voice he'd used a lifetime ago when calming hostages and victims. "Slow down. Where's your mother?" "The apartments." The girl pointed with a shaking hand toward the cluster of buildings 2 blocks east. 308. They have bats and one has a pipe, please. She's bleeding so much." Evan's eyes tracked to the blood on her dress, his mind automatically cataloging, assessing. Spatter patterns suggested proximity to impact. Not her blood. She showed no signs of injury beyond scraped knees. Someone else's. Fresh. Within the last 10 minutes based on the coagulation rate despite the rain. "What's your name?" he asked, his hands gently checking her for injuries, even as his eyes scanned the parking lot for threats. Lila Lane." She grabbed his wrist with surprising strength. "My mom told me to run, to find help. She said—" Her voice broke into a sob. "She said to find a good man. Are you a good man?" Something ancient and cold settled into Evan's chest. He thought of Sophie, safe at home with Mrs. Chen from 4B, probably watching cartoons and eating the cookies he'd told her to save for after dinner. He thought of what he'd do, what he'd want someone to do, if Sophie were in danger. He thought of Istanbul, of the promises he'd made, of the man he'd been before he became the man he was trying to be. "Yeah," he said quietly, standing and taking her hand. His grip was gentle but unbreakable. "Yeah, I'm a good man, and I'm going to help your mother. But I need you to do exactly what I say. Can you do that?" Lila nodded frantically, her small hand gripping his like a lifeline. Evan pulled out his phone with his free hand, dialing 911 as he started moving toward his car. The operator answered on the second ring. 911, what's your emergency?" "Assault in progress, 2247 Riverside Apartments, Unit 308. Multiple assailants, at least 1 victim down. I'm responding now." His voice was clipped, professional. "Sir, please don't approach." He hung up. They'd come, but not fast enough. They never did. He opened the passenger door of his sedan and lifted Lila inside. "Seatbelt, now." She complied with shaking hands as he rounded the car and slid behind the wheel. The engine coughed once, twice. "Come on, you piece of junk, not now," then caught. He threw it into gear and accelerated out of the parking lot, tires hydroplaning slightly on the flooded asphalt. "How many men?" he asked, his voice still that supernatural calm. "Three, maybe 4. I don't know. I ran when Mom told me to." Fresh tears tracked down her face. "I'm sorry. I should have stayed. I should have—" "You did exactly right." Evan cut her off, taking a turn too fast, the sedan's suspension protesting. "You got help. That's what she wanted. That's brave." "Who are you?" Lila asked, her voice small. Evan's hands tightened on the wheel. "Just a dad. Just a guy who fixes electronics." But that wasn't entirely true, and they both knew it. There was something in the way he moved, in the way he'd assessed her injuries in seconds, in the way he drove now, controlled, purposeful, like a man intimately familiar with violence. The apartment complex loomed ahead, a decrepit collection of 3-story buildings that the city had forgotten decades ago. Broken streetlights cast pools of shadow between flickering amber glows. Evan scanned automatically. 2 exits, multiple blind spots, fire escapes on the east side. He pulled up to the curb 50 feet from Building C and killed the engine. "Listen to me very carefully," he said, turning to Lila. His eyes were intense but not unkind. "You're going to stay in this car, doors locked, windows up. If anyone except me or a police officer approaches, you lay on the horn and don't stop, understand?" "But my mom—" "I'm going to get your mom, but I need to know you're safe first. Promise me." Lila's chin trembled, but she nodded. "Promise." "Good girl." Evan reached under his seat and pulled out a small canvas bag. From it, he extracted a compact first aid kit and a folding knife, pocketing both. His hand hesitated over something else in the bag, something metallic that caught the light, before he shook his head and left it. Not yet. Maybe never again. He stepped out into the rain, which had somehow intensified, coming down in sheets that reduced visibility to maybe 20 feet. Perfect cover. He moved toward Building C, his footsteps silent despite the puddles, his body shifting into a predatory crouch that would have shocked anyone who knew him as mild-mannered Evan the repairman. The man who'd served 6 years in Echo Division didn't walk like other men. He moved like smoke, like shadow, like violence waiting to be unleashed. Building C's entrance door hung off one hinge, a testament to the neighborhood's decay. The lobby smelled of mildew and desperation. Evan took the stairs 2 at a time, his breathing controlled, his mind already running scenarios. 3 to 4 assailants, at least 1 blunt weapon. Victim injured but alive as of 10 minutes ago. Hostage rescue protocol. Assess, isolate, neutralize. 3rd floor. The hallway stretched before him, doors bearing faded numbers. 302, 304, 306, 308. The door was ajar, and from within came the sounds that confirmed his worst fears. A woman's muffled scream. Male laughter. The meaty thud of impact against flesh. Evan's hand went to the knife in his pocket, then stopped. He forced himself to breathe, to think. Going in armed escalated everything. Made it harder to explain to the police afterward. Made it harder to claim self-defense. But the scream came again, weaker this time, and Evan stopped caring about explanations. He pushed the door open. The apartment was small, barely more than a studio. Trash and furniture lay scattered as if a tornado had swept through. And in the center of the chaos, a woman knelt on the floor, her arms raised protectively over her head. 3 men surrounded her like wolves circling wounded prey. The biggest one, easily 6'3" and 250, held a steel pipe that dripped with something dark. His face was flushed with exertion and excitement, the face of a man who enjoyed what he did. "No one walks away from Marcus Lane, what?" he roared, raising the pipe. "Your husband thinks he can divorce you, take his money, and leave? Thinks he can embarrass the Lane family?" The woman, and Evan's breath caught because even through the blood and bruises, he could see the bone structure, the designer clothes now torn and ruined, the bearing of someone who'd never expected to find herself on a floor like this, looked up with defiant eyes. Marcus is my ex-husband, she spat through split lips. He doesn't own me. We'll see about that. The pipe started its downward arc. Leave her. The words cut through the room like a blade through silk. All three men spun toward the doorway where Evan stood, rain dripping from his jacket, his face expressionless. The big man with the pipe, he seemed to be the leader, sneered. Who the hell are you? Her boyfriend? You got about 5 seconds to get lost before you end up bleeding next to her. Evan stepped into the apartment, closing the door behind him. The click of the latch seemed impossibly loud. I'm her daughter's friend, he said quietly, and you're going to step away from her, now. The second man, wiry and jittery like a meth user, laughed. You hear this guy? Friend of the daughter? He pulled a folding knife from his pocket, flicking it open. What are you going to do? Fix us? You look like a Best Buy reject. Evan's eyes tracked the knife, cataloging it. 4-inch blade, probably cheap steel. The man held it wrong, thumb over the top. Amateur. The third man, stocky and silent, had positioned himself near the window, hands empty but fists clenched. Potential flanking position. The woman on the floor met Evan's eyes, and in that moment, something passed between them. Recognition. Not of each other, but of types. She saw in him what he saw in her, someone who'd survived worse than this, someone with resources deeper than appeared on the surface. Lila, she whispered. Safe. In my car. Relief flooded her battered face, so intense it was almost painful to watch. The leader's eyes narrowed. Touching. Real touching. Well, hero, since you stuck your nose where it don't belong, you can bleed too. He adjusted his grip on the pipe. Marcus said no witnesses anyway. Last chance, Evan said, his voice dropping to something barely above a whisper. Walk away. The wiry one with the knife moved first, lunging forward with a wild slash aimed at Evan's throat. Amateur hour. Evan's hand snapped up, catching the man's wrist mid-swing. The momentum of the attacker's charge carried him forward, and Evan simply redirected it, adding a slight twist. The man's own weight and velocity became a weapon against him. There was a wet crunch as his face met the edge of the door, and he crumpled like a puppet with cut strings, the knife clattering to the floor. 1 second, one attacker down. What the? The stocky one started, moving forward. Evan was already there, inside his reach before the man could set his stance. Palm strike to the solar plexus, driving the air from his lungs. As the man doubled over, Evan's knee came up, connecting with his descending face. The stocky man went down hard, out before he hit the floor. 3 seconds, 2 down. The leader with the pipe had recovered from his shock, rage flooding his features. You son of a... He swung the pipe in a wide arc, putting all his considerable strength behind it. Evan ducked under it, the pipe whistling over his head close enough to feel the breeze. Before the leader could recover from the momentum of his swing, Evan stepped in, his elbow driving up under the man's chin. The leader's head snapped back and Evan smoothly swept his legs out from under him. The pipe hit the floor with a metallic clang, rolling to a stop at the woman's knees. The leader, credit to him, tried to get up, tried to fight back. But Evan was already standing over him, 1 foot on his chest, and something in Evan's eyes, something cold and ancient and utterly merciless, made the man freeze. Stay down, Evan said softly. The leader stayed down. 5 seconds, 3 attackers neutralized. Evan turned to the woman, who was staring at him with a mixture of shock, relief, and something else. Recognition of violence, recognition of what he must have been to move like that. Can you stand? He asked, extending his hand. She took it, and he helped her to her feet. She swayed slightly, one hand going to her ribs, and Evan noticed the defensive wounds on her arms, the darkening bruises on her throat. She'd fought back. Good. I'm Clara, she managed, her voice hoarse. Clara Lane. Evan Turner, we need to get you to a hospital. Lila first, I need to see Lila. She's safe, I promise. But you need medical attention. Clara shook her head stubbornly, then winced at the motion. After I see my daughter. The apartment door exploded inward, not opened. Exploded. The cheap wood frame splintered as 2 men shoulder charged through it, and 3 more poured in behind them. These weren't the amateur thugs Evan had just put down. These men moved with coordination, with purpose, with the kind of discipline that came from training. The leader of this new group, a tall man with a scar bisecting his left eyebrow, took in the scene, his 3 men down, Evan standing protectively in front of Clara, and smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. Well, well. Marcus said there might be complications. Glad I brought the A-team. Evan's mind raced. 5 new assailants, all standing, all coordinated. Clara injured behind him, no cover, no weapons except the dropped pipe and knife, too far away to reach without exposing his back. The door blocked. Window behind them, 3rd floor, no fire escape on this side. Bad odds. Very bad odds. Clara, Evan said quietly, not taking his eyes off the 5 men spreading out to surround them. Get behind me and stay low. Evan, there are 5 of them. I know, behind me. Now. She complied, her hand gripping the back of his jacket. Evan could feel her trembling, but she stood, refused to cower. The scarred leader cracked his knuckles. I'm going to enjoy this. Marcus wants the woman alive, barely, but you? You're just a complication that needs erasing. He nodded to his men. Break him. They moved as one, a coordinated assault that confirmed Evan's assessment. Trained, maybe ex-military or private security, certainly more dangerous than the first 3, but they'd made a critical mistake. They'd assumed Evan was just some civilian who'd gotten lucky with 3 drunk thugs. They were very, very wrong. The first man came in with a textbook 1-2 combination, jab-cross, professional boxing stance. Evan slipped both punches, his hands a blur as he trapped the extended arm, and used the man's own momentum to send him stumbling into his companion. They tangled together, creating a momentary opening. Evan took it. He surged forward, driving a knife hand strike into the 3rd man's throat. Not enough to kill, but enough to make breathing very difficult. The man went down gagging. 2 more coming from the flanks, trying to pincer him. Evan dropped, sweeping low, taking one man's legs out. As that one fell, Evan rolled, coming up inside the other's guard, and delivered a rapid series of strikes. Ribs, kidney, back of the knee. The man crumpled. 5 seconds. 3 down. 2 still standing plus the leader. But Evan was breathing hard now, that old injury in his left shoulder starting to throb. He wasn't 25 anymore. Wasn't the man who'd gone through Echo Division training without breaking a sweat. Time and fatherhood had softened him, slowed him. The scarred leader and 1 remaining thug circled him, more cautious now. You've got training, the leader observed. Military? Let me guess. His eyes narrowed. Those moves, that efficiency. Special operations? Evan didn't respond, just kept his stance loose, his breathing controlled. Behind him, Clara was silent, but he could feel her presence, her faith in him. Can't let her down. Can't let Lila down. The remaining thug, impatient or stupid, lunged forward. Evan started to counter, but his shoulder chose that moment to spasm, the old shrapnel wound from Istanbul flaring. His response was a fraction of a second slow. A fraction was all it took. The thug's fist connected with Evan's jaw, snapping his head to the side. Stars exploded across his vision. Before he could recover, the scarred leader was there, driving a knee into his stomach. Air exploded from Evan's lungs. He went down on one knee, the world tilting. Evan! Clara's scream seemed to come from far away. The thug grabbed Evan's collar, hauling him up, and the scarred leader's fist drove into his ribs once, twice, 3 times. Evan tasted blood, felt something crack. This is it, a distant part of his mind observed clinically. This is how it ends, some second-rate thugs in a third-rate apartment. Not exactly how I imagined going out. He thought of Sophie. Who would pick her up from school? Who would help with her homework? Who would tell her bedtime stories? He thought of Lila, waiting in his car, trusting that he would save her mother. He thought of Clara, whose face he'd seen in a photograph 10 years ago, held by trembling hands in a ruined embassy in Istanbul. No. The word detonated in his mind like a flashbang. No, not like this. Not today. Something clicked in Evan Turner's mind, a switch that he'd kept firmly off for years flipping back to its original position. The repairman, the gentle father, the man who fixed broken electronics. That man stepped aside. An echo came back. His hand, which had been hanging limp, suddenly snapped up, fingers rigid, driving into the thug's throat. The man's grip on Evan's collar loosened as he staggered back, choking. Evan rose smoothly despite the pain in his ribs, and his foot lashed out, connecting with the thug's knee. There was a wet pop, and the man went down screaming. The scarred leader's eyes widened. He'd seen the transformation, seen what Evan had become. Evan didn't let him finish. He moved with a speed that seemed impossible for someone who'd just taken a beating, closing the distance before the leader could set his stance. His strikes were precise, economical, designed to end the fight as quickly as possible. Solar plexus, throat, temple, kidney, behind the knee. The scarred leader dropped like a stone. Evan stood over him, breathing hard, pain screaming from his ribs and shoulder and jaw. But he was standing. They weren't. The apartment fell silent except for the moans of the injured and the endless drum of rain against the windows. Clara was staring at him, her expression unreadable. "Who are you?" she whispered. Before Evan could answer, before he could try to explain the unexplainable, the wail of sirens cut through the night. Red and blue lights strobed through the window, painting the carnage in alternating shades. Evan's shoulders sagged. His hands were shaking now, the adrenaline wearing off, leaving behind only pain and the terrible knowledge that he'd crossed a line he'd sworn never to cross again. "I'm just a man who fixes things," he said quietly. "I'm just a dad." Clara shook her head slowly. "No. You're something else, something—" She trailed off as heavy footsteps thundered up the stairs. "Police, hands where we can see them!" 6 officers flooded into the apartment, guns drawn, shouting commands. Evan slowly raised his hands, wincing as his ribs protested. "On the ground! Now! Everyone on the ground!" Evan complied, lowering himself carefully to the floor, his hands behind his head. An officer's knee pressed into his back, and he felt the cold metal of handcuffs click around his wrists. "Wait!" Claire's voice was desperate. "He saved me! Those men were attacking me! He saved us!" "Ma'am, we'll sort this out at the station. Right now we have 8 men down and 1 man standing. That's what I see." They hauled Evan to his feet, and he caught Clara's eyes. She was crying now, silently, her battered face a mask of anguish. "Lila," he said urgently. "Blue sedan, 50 feet down the street. She's alone. Please." Clara nodded frantically. "Go," she told one of the officers. "My daughter, please. She's only 8. 2 officers peeled off, heading for the stairs at a run. They led Evan out of the apartment, down the stairs, through a growing crowd of neighbors and gawkers. The rain had finally stopped, leaving the world washed clean and glistening. An ambulance had pulled up, and paramedics were rushing past with gurneys. At the street, Evan saw his sedan surrounded by police. The passenger door was open, and an officer was crouched down, talking to someone inside. A small figure in a white dress. Lila saw him, cuffed and being led to a patrol car, and her face crumpled. "No, he helped! He helped my mom! Don't take him!" The officer restraining Evan, a young guy, probably mid-20s, said uncertainly, "Look, Mr. Turner, right? Just cooperate and this'll all get straightened out." "My daughter," Evan said, his voice rough. "I need to call someone to pick up my daughter. Sophie Turner, 4B at the Riverside Complex. Mrs. Chen is watching her, but I need to—" "We'll make the call," the officer said, not unkindly. He started to guide Evan toward the patrol car when a voice cut through the chaos. "Wait! Wait!" A man in his 50s, gray-haired and bearing the bearing authority on his shoulders like a well-worn coat, pushed through the crowd of officers. Captain's bars gleamed on his collar. "Let me see his ID," he commanded. The young officer patted down Evan's pockets, pulling out his wallet. He handed it to the captain, who flipped it open. Whatever he saw there made him freeze. The captain's eyes went from the wallet to Evan's face and back again, his expression cycling through confusion, disbelief, and finally, something like wonder. "Holy Mary, Mother of God," he whispered. "Echo Division?" Evan said nothing. The captain moved closer, ignoring the rain-soaked pavement and the watching crowd. "Son, this badge says Unit Echo. That unit was dissolved 10 years ago after Istanbul. Official records say no one survived." "Records are accurate," Evan said flatly. "I didn't survive, just kept breathing." The captain's hand was shaking as he pulled something else from the wallet, a worn photograph. Is this your daughter? Sophie, she's 7. Someone needs to... I'll handle it personally. The captain turned to the young officer. Uncuff him, now. But Captain, the scene... I said now! The bark of command had immediate effect. The cuffs came off, and Evan rubbed his wrists, feeling returning circulation. The captain lowered his voice so only Evan could hear. I was a lieutenant in the 75th Ranger Regiment. I know what Echo Division was. I know what men like you did. His eyes glistened. My son was one of the hostages in Istanbul, one of the kids from the embassy school. He came home because of you and your team. So whatever happened in that apartment, whatever you did, you saved that woman and her daughter, didn't you? Evan nodded slowly. Then there's no crime here. Self-defense, defense of others. Clean shoot, or clean fight in this case. The captain raised his voice. This man is not a suspect. He's a witness and a victim of assault. Treat him accordingly. The atmosphere shifted immediately. Officers who'd been viewing Evan as a perpetrator now saw him differently. One even offered an apologetic nod. Clara emerged from the building, supported by paramedics, a blanket draped over her shoulders. Her eyes found Evan, and despite her injuries, despite everything, she smiled. And then Evan saw something that made his heart stop. Lila had squirmed away from the officer and was running toward them, her small legs pumping. But behind her, at the edge of the crowd, a figure in a dark hoodie was moving, tracking her movement with predatory intent. Evan's mind processed it in an instant. Wrong body language, wrong focus, moving against the flow of the crowd. Threat. Lila, he shouted, lunging forward. The figure in the hoodie accelerated, hands reaching for the girl. Evan closed the distance in seconds that felt like hours, his injured body screaming protest. He reached Lila just as the figure did, scooping her up with one arm and spinning to put his body between her and the threat. The figure crashed into him, and Evan's free hand shot out, grabbing a fistful of hoodie. They went down in a tangle, Evan curling around Lila to protect her from impact. Officers swarmed them immediately, separating Evan from the figure. They yanked back the hood, revealing a wild-eyed man in his 30s, twitching and jerking. Marcus sent me, the man screamed. She's supposed to come with me. The kid's supposed to come with me. Clara's scream of rage was primal. Get away from my daughter. Get away. The captain was already there, and this time the cuffs clicked on someone who deserved them. Get him in a car, full security, and somebody find out who Marcus is. Marcus Lane, Clara spat, being held back by paramedics. My ex-husband. He hired these men. He's behind all of this. The captain's eyes hardened. Then Marcus Lane is about to have a very bad night. Evan slowly got to his feet, still holding Lila, who was clinging to him like a burr. Her mother rushed over, and there was a moment of beautiful chaos as Clara wrapped her arms around both of them, the three of them standing in the middle of a crime scene, holding each other like lifelines. Thank you, Clara whispered into Evan's shoulder. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Evan didn't know what to say. His training had taught him how to fight, how to protect, how to survive. It had never taught him how to accept gratitude. Mom! Lila's voice was muffled against Evan's chest. Mom, he's like a superhero. He saved you. Clara pulled back slightly, her eyes meeting Evan's. There was something in her gaze, recognition, curiosity, and something else he couldn't quite identify. Yes, she said softly. Yes, he did. The captain approached, his expression gentler now. Ms. Lane, we need to get you to a hospital. And Mr. Turner, you took some hits. You should get checked out too. My daughter is being picked up as we speak. I've got a unit heading to your apartment now. She'll be brought to the hospital. Don't worry. Evan nodded, suddenly aware of how much everything hurt. His ribs felt like they were on fire. His shoulder throbbed and his jaw was swelling. But Lila was safe. Clara was alive. That's what mattered. As they were being led to separate ambulances, Clara called out, Evan! He turned. I don't know who you really are, she said, her voice carrying over the chaos and rain and sirens. But I know my father was in Istanbul 10 years ago. I know he almost died there. And I know he said a soldier saved his life. A soldier with kind eyes and a gentle voice who told him to hang on, to think of his daughter because his daughter needed him. Evan's breath caught. My father showed me a photo of his family, Before he left for that posting, I was 16, full of anger and rebellion and teenage certainty that the world owed me something. Clara's voice broke. He came back changed, quieter, kinder. He died 3 years ago, but before he did, he told me about that soldier. He said the man introduced himself only as Echo. The captain's head whipped toward Evan. You were at the embassy? You were one of the team that... Evan closed his eyes. Different life. Different man. The hell it was, the captain breathed. The Istanbul embassy siege, 43 hostages, including 12 kids. Every tactical team said it was impossible, said we'd be lucky to save 10%. You and your team saved 41. We lost 2, Evan said flatly. You saved 41, the captain repeated, including my son, including Clara's father. Clara was crying openly now, but she was smiling too. He never forgot you. None of them did. Evan felt something crack inside his chest, something that had been frozen since Istanbul. I'm glad he made it home. I'm glad they had more time together. Because of you. Clara wiped her eyes. And now you've saved me, saved Lila. How do I even begin to thank you? You don't, Evan said simply. You take care of your daughter, you love her, you make sure she knows she's safe. That's enough. The paramedic touched his arm gently. Sir, we really need to get you to the hospital. Evan nodded, turning to go. But Lila's voice stopped him. Will I see you again? He looked back at the little girl, this brave, terrified, perfect little girl who'd run into a storm to find help for her mother. I don't know, Lila. I hope so, she said, because you're my hero. And heroes always come back, right? Evan's throat tightened. He thought of Sophie, waiting for him. He thought of the quiet life he'd built, the peace he'd found fixing broken things instead of breaking people. He thought of the look in Clara's eyes, not fear of what he'd done, but gratitude for what he'd saved. Yeah, he said finally, his voice rough with emotion. Yeah, heroes always come back. As they loaded him into the ambulance, as the doors closed and the world reduced to beeping monitors and antiseptic smells, Evan allowed himself to acknowledge a truth he'd been running from for 10 years. You could leave the life. You could walk away from the unit, from the missions, from the violence. You could change your name and your job and your entire existence, but you couldn't change what you were. Not really. The training was too deep, the instincts too ingrained. Echo Division had made him into a weapon, and weapons didn't become something else just because you decided you were tired of cutting. The question was, what did you do with that truth? Did you hide from it, pretend it didn't exist, live in fear of the moment when the mask would slip? Or did you accept it, own it, and decide to be a weapon that protected instead of destroyed? As the ambulance pulled away, sirens wailing, carrying him toward an uncertain future, Evan Turner made a choice. He'd spent 10 years running, 10 years trying to be someone else, 10 years believing that the man who'd emerged from Istanbul, broken, haunted, soaked in blood that wouldn't wash off, was someone to be ashamed of. But tonight, he'd used those skills, that training, that darkness inside him, and he'd saved 2 lives. 2 innocent lives that would have been destroyed by casual cruelty. Maybe that's what redemption looked like. Not forgetting what you were, but deciding what you do with it. The paramedic was saying something, checking his vitals, but Evan's mind was elsewhere. He was thinking about the look in Lila's eyes when she'd called him a hero, about the way Clara had recognized him, not as a monster, but as the man who'd saved her father. About how, for the first time in 10 years, he didn't feel like he was pretending. The ambulance hit a pothole, jostling him, sending fresh pain through his ribs. The paramedic apologized, adjusted the IV they'd started. You did good tonight, the young woman said quietly. I heard what happened, what you did. Evan didn't respond, couldn't respond. His throat was too tight. 8 men, she continued, checking the IV line. And you put them all down to save a woman and her daughter. That's something special. Just did what needed doing, Evan managed. Yeah, well, most people don't have the needs doing in them. Most people freeze, run, but you ran toward it. She smiled. Your daughter must be proud. Sophie. God, Sophie must be terrified by now, Mrs. Chen would have told her the police came, that Daddy was coming home late. She'd be waiting by the window, probably clutching that ratty stuffed bear she refused to give up. I need to call her, Evan said urgently. My daughter, she'll be worried. They'll have her at the hospital when we arrive, the paramedic assured him. Captain's orders. She'll be the first face you see when they wheel you in. Evan relaxed marginally. The captain had been true to his word so far. A fellow veteran, someone who understood the code. He'd take care of Sophie. The ambulance swayed and turned, and through the small windows, Evan could see the city lights blurring past. His city. The place he'd chosen to rebuild his life, to raise his daughter, to be normal. How normal was he now? After tonight? After everyone had seen what he could do? His phone buzzed in his pocket. Somehow it had survived the fight. The paramedic fished it out for him, and he saw the screen light up with a text from an unknown number. This isn't over. Marcus Lane doesn't forget. You should have stayed out of it. Evan stared at the message, feeling that old cold settle into his bones. Of course it wasn't over. It never was. Violence begat violence. Protecting Clara and Lila had painted a target on his back, on Sophie's back. Another buzz, another message. This one had a photo attached. Evan's blood turned to ice. It was a picture of his apartment building, of his window, and in that window a small silhouette, Sophie, waiting for her father to come home. The message below read, "Pretty daughter you have. Be ashamed if something happened while you're playing hero." "Stop the ambulance," Evan said, his voice deadly calm. "Sir, we're almost at the hospital. Stop the ambulance!" The roar that came from him made the paramedic jump. She hammered on the partition to the driver, and the vehicle lurched to a halt. Evan was already ripping off the IV, ignoring the paramedic's protests. He threw open the back doors and stumbled out onto the street, pain screaming through his body. His phone was already to his ear, dialing 911. As it rang, he flagged down a passing car, a young couple who looked terrified when he stumbled toward them. "I need your car," he said. "Now." "Dude, what the—" Evan pulled out his wallet, grabbed every bill inside, maybe $300, and thrust it at them. "My daughter is in danger. I need your car. Please." Something in his eyes, in his voice, convinced them. The driver swapped seats with his girlfriend, and they scrambled out. "It's a stick shift," he warned. "I can drive anything." Evan slid behind the wheel as 911 answered. "This is Evan Turner. I was involved in the incident at Riverside Apartments. I need immediate police response to 2247 Riverside, Building D, Unit 4B. B. Credible threat against my 7-year-old daughter. Suspect is Marcus Lane or his associates. Sir, units are already en route to your location. They need to be at my apartment. Now." He killed the call, threw the car into gear, and accelerated into traffic. The young couple's car was a beat-up Honda, but it ran. Evan pushed it hard, weaving through late-night traffic, running red lights, his mind focused on one thing and one thing only. Sophie. His phone rang. Unknown number. He answered anyway, putting it on speaker as he took a turn too fast, tires squealing. "Mr. Turner." A smooth, cultured voice, a voice used to being obeyed. "This is Marcus Lane. If you touch my daughter—" "Oh, I'm not going to touch your daughter. I'm a civilized man. I hire people for that sort of thing." The smile was audible in his voice. "You interfered in my business tonight, made me look weak, made me look like I can't control my own ex-wife. That's unacceptable." "Your ex-wife doesn't belong to you," Evan growled, swerving around a slow-moving truck. "Everything belongs to me, Mr. Turner. You just haven't learned that yet. But you will." A pause. "Tell me, how does it feel, knowing that while you were playing White Knight for Clara, your own daughter was vulnerable? Does it feel like a mistake yet?" Evan's hands tightened on the wheel until his knuckles went white. "Whatever you want from Clara, take it up with her. Leave the kids out of it." "But that's where you're wrong. The kids are leverage. They're how you make people understand who's in charge." Marcus's voice hardened. "So here's how this works. You back off. You disappear. You forget everything that happened tonight. If I so much as catch a whisper of you being near Clara or Lila again, your daughter pays the price. Am I clear?" "Crystal." Evan's voice was flat, emotionless. And here's how this actually works. If anything happens to my daughter, if she gets a scratch, if she has a bad dream, if she's scared for even 1 second because of you, I will find you, and I will show you exactly what Echo Division trained me to do to men who threaten children. Silence on the other end. Then, slowly, Echo Division? You're bluffing. Try me. Another pause, longer this time. You're that Turner, the one from Istanbul. Holy shit, you're actually him. Marcus laughed, but it sounded forced. They said you were dead. I got better. And Marcus? I'm coming for you anyway. Tonight was just the opening move. Every man you sent is talking to police right now. Every connection is being traced. Every dollar you've ever spent on dirty work is getting exposed. You're finished. We'll see about that. Evan hung up and threw the phone onto the passenger seat. His apartment building loomed ahead, and he could see police cars pulling up, officers moving toward the entrance. He screeched to a halt, barely remembering to put the car in park before he was out and running. His ribs protested. His shoulders screamed. He didn't care. Third floor, door 4B. Officers were already there, Mrs. Chen standing in the hallway looking terrified. Sophie, Evan gasped. Mrs. Chen pointed inside. She's okay, she's okay. She's in her room. There were men, Mr. Turner, men in the stairwell, but they ran when the police came. Evan pushed past her, through his apartment door, down the short hallway to Sophie's room. She was sitting on her bed, clutching her bear, eyes wide but dry. When she saw him, she launched herself across the room. Daddy! He caught her, gathered her up despite the pain, held her so tight he was probably hurting her but couldn't make himself let go. I'm here, baby. I'm here. You're safe. You're safe. Mrs. Chen said there were bad men, that you were helping someone, that you got hurt. Sophie pulled back to look at his face, at the swelling jaw and the blood on his shirt. Daddy, what happened? What could he tell her? How could he explain? I helped someone tonight, he said finally. A little girl and her mom. They were in trouble and I helped them. Like a superhero? Despite everything, Evan smiled. Yeah, like a superhero. I knew it, Sophie said seriously. I always knew you were special. The other kids' dads can't fix anything like you can. And you know everything, and you always make me feel safe. She touched his face gently. You're my superhero, Daddy. Evan felt tears sting his eyes. You're my everything, Sophie. Nothing is more important to me than you. Nothing. I know. She hugged him again. That's why you're the best daddy ever. A police officer appeared in the doorway. Mr. Turner, Captain wants to speak with you. We've swept the building, posted guards. You're secure for now. For now. Those two words hung in the air like a threat. For now wasn't good enough. Not when Marcus Lane was out there, making threats, sending men to his home. Evan settled Sophie back on her bed. I need to talk to the police for a minute. Mrs. Chen will stay with you, okay? Okay, but Daddy, come back soon. Always. In the living room, the captain was waiting along with another officer and a woman in a dark suit, FBI, Evan guessed by the bearing. Mr. Turner, the captain said, this is Special Agent Morrison. She has some questions. Marcus Lane called me, Evan said without preamble. Threatened my daughter, told me to back off from Clara Lane or he'd hurt Sophie. I have the call recorded on my phone if you need it. Agent Morrison's eyes sharpened. We'll need that phone. Mr. Turner, how much do you know about Marcus Lane? Nothing. Until tonight, I'd never heard of him. He's a person of interest in multiple federal investigations, Morrison said. Money laundering, racketeering, suspected connections to organized crime, but he's been untouchable. Rich, connected, lawyers who can make evidence disappear. His ex-wife Clara was our best shot at getting information, but she's been too scared to testify. After tonight, that might change, Evan said. After tonight, Marcus Lane is going to go to ground. He's going to insulate himself with lawyers and bodyguards and alibi witnesses. By morning, he'll have explanations for everything. The men who attacked Clara were acting on their own. He knew nothing about it. He's shocked and appalled. Morrison shook her head. We've seen this pattern before. He's very good at staying clean. Then you need to move fast, Evan said. The men you arrested tonight know who hired them. Make them roll on Marcus before he can get to them. Already working on it. But Mr. Turner, I need to be frank with you. You've made yourself a target. A man like Marcus Lane doesn't forget when someone interferes with his business. He'll come after you. I know. You need protection, witness security, at minimum. We can move you and your daughter to a safe house. No. Evan's voice was flat. Sophie's already been through too much. I'm not uprooting her life, not putting her in a safe house where she's cut off from everything she knows. Then he'll kill you, Morrison said bluntly. Or worse, he'll hurt your daughter to get to you. He can try. Evan met her eyes. Agent Morrison, I spent 6 years in a unit that specialized in the impossible, protecting people who everyone else had written off. I've survived things that would give you nightmares. Marcus Lane is just another threat, and I've dealt with worse. The captain cleared his throat. Agent Morrison, I was military. I know what Echo Division was. If anyone can protect themselves, it's this man. Morrison looked between them, clearly unconvinced. This isn't a war zone, gentlemen. This is civilian life, different rules. And Mr. Turner, I don't care how well trained you are. You can't watch your back 24/7. Sooner or later, you'll slip, you'll make a mistake, and he'll be there. She was right, and Evan knew it. But what choice did he have? Run? Hide? Spend the rest of his life looking over his shoulder? No. He'd done that for 10 years, and it hadn't worked. Running from his past hadn't made it go away. It had just postponed the reckoning. I appreciate the concern, Evan said, but Sophie and I are staying. Postcards if you want. I'll take any reasonable precautions, but we're not running. Morrison sighed. Your funeral. Just make sure your daughter doesn't end up as collateral damage to your pride. Evan's eyes went cold. My daughter is the only thing in this world I care about. Everything I do to protect her. Remember that. Morrison held his gaze for a moment, then nodded. Fair enough, but Mr. Turner? Call us when... Not if when Marcus makes his move. Don't try to handle this alone. I'll keep that in mind. After they left, after the guards were posted, and Mrs. Chen had gone home, and Sophie had finally fallen asleep clutching her bear, Evan sat in his darkened living room staring at nothing. His phone buzzed. A text from Clara. Are you okay? The police told me about the threats. I'm so sorry. This is my fault. Evan typed back, You shit, not your fault. Marcus made his choices. How are you and Lila? Bruised but alive, thanks to you. They're keeping me overnight for observation. Lila won't let go of my hand. Good. Don't let her. Evan, what you did tonight, what you are. I need to understand. Evan stared at the message for a long moment, then typed, I'm just a man who was very good at something very bad. Spent 10 years trying to be someone else. Tonight showed me that was a mistake. You can't run from what you are. You can only decide what you do with it. And what are you going to do with it? Evan looked towards Sophie's room where his daughter slept, innocent and trusting and vulnerable. Whatever it takes to keep the people I love safe. Then I think we should talk, because I have a feeling Marcus isn't going to stop, and I have resources, information, things that might help. Tomorrow, rest tonight. We'll figure it out. Evan, thank you for everything. For my father, all those years ago. For me and Lila tonight. For being the kind of man who runs toward danger instead of away from it. Get some sleep, Clara. He set the phone aside and closed his eyes, listening to the quiet sounds of his apartment, the hum of the refrigerator, the whisper of Sophie's breathing from her room, the muted voices of the guards outside his door. Somewhere out there, Marcus Lane was planning, plotting, gathering his resources for the next attack. But Evan wasn't afraid. For the first time in 10 years, he felt ready. Like pieces of a puzzle had finally clicked into place. He'd spent a decade hiding from Echo, from the violence and the skills and the darkness. But tonight had shown him the truth. Echo wasn't something to hide from. It was a tool, a weapon, and weapons weren't inherently good or evil. They just were. What mattered was who wielded them, and why. Evan Turner had been a weapon designed to protect the innocent and destroy the guilty. 10 years ago, when everything had gone wrong in Istanbul, he'd decided that made him a monster. Tonight, he'd learned he'd been wrong. He wasn't a monster. He was a guardian. And guardians didn't run. They didn't hide. They stood their ground and protected what mattered. Sophie mattered. Clara and Lila mattered. Every person Marcus Lane wanted to hurt mattered. And Evan was done running. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. Marcus would regroup, come at them from a different angle. There would be lawyers and threats, and perhaps more violence. The road ahead was dark and dangerous. But Evan wasn't walking it alone anymore. Clara had resources. The captain had his respect and backing. Agent Morrison, despite her skepticism, had the weight of federal law enforcement behind her. And Evan had something Marcus Lane couldn't buy or steal or corrupt. The absolute, unwavering certainty that some things were worth fighting for, worth dying for if necessary. His daughter sleeping in the next room. The little girl who'd run to him in the rain. Her mother who'd recognized him from a photograph and a story told by a grateful father. They were worth it. Worth everything. Evan opened his eyes and rose from the couch, moving to Sophie's doorway. She was sprawled across her bed, one arm thrown over her bare, her face peaceful in sleep. "I'm not going to let anything happen to you," he whispered. "Whatever it takes, sweetheart. Whatever it costs. You're safe. That's a promise." Sophie stirred slightly, mumbling something about pancakes, and Evan smiled despite everything. Tomorrow, he'd make her pancakes. Tomorrow, they'd figure out the next steps. Tomorrow, they'd start building whatever came after tonight. But tonight, right now, his daughter was safe and sleeping, and a little girl named Lila was holding her mother's hand in a hospital room, and both of them were alive because Evan Turner had stopped running from who he was. That was enough. That was everything. Outside, the rain had finally stopped, leaving the city washed clean and glistening. Somewhere out there, Marcus Lane was planning his next move, convinced that money and power and ruthlessness would be enough. He was about to learn the hard way that some men can't be bought, can't be intimidated, and can't be stopped. Some men are guardians, forged in fire and blood, and impossible choices. And once a guardian decides to protect something, hell itself can't make him back down. Evan closed Sophie's door softly and returned to the living room, his mind already working through scenarios, possibilities, threats. The tactical part of his brain, the part he'd tried so hard to suppress, was fully awake now, and it whispered of things that needed to be done, preparations that needed to be made. But that was tomorrow's work. Tonight, he just stood guard, like he'd been trained to do, like he'd always done, even when he didn't want to admit it. The guardian was back, and God help anyone who threatened his family now. Dawn broke over the city like a wound, all purple bruises and blood-orange streaks across a sky that promised nothing good. Evan hadn't slept. He'd spent the night in the chair by Sophie's door, listening to her breathe, his mind running through scenarios like a computer processing threat assessments. Every creak of the building made his muscles tense. Every footstep in the hallway outside brought his hand to the knife he'd retrieved from his go bag. The bag he'd kept packed for 10 years, telling himself it was just paranoia, knowing deep down it was preparation. The guards had changed shift at 4 a.m., quiet voices and radio chatter filtering through the door. Professional, alert. But Evan knew from experience that alertness faded. Humans weren't designed for sustained vigilance. Give it another day, maybe two, and they'd start relaxing. Start assuming the threat had passed. Marcus Lane was counting on that. Sophie stirred around 6:30, her internal alarm clock more reliable than any device. Evan was in the kitchen when she patted out, still in her pajamas, bare tucked under one arm. "Morning, Daddy." She climbed onto her usual stool at the counter, eyeing him carefully. "You didn't sleep." "How do you know?" "You're wearing the same clothes, and you have that look." She tilted her head, studying him with an intensity that always surprised him. 7 years old, and she could read him like a book. The look you get when you're worried but trying not to show it. Evan cracked eggs into a bowl, whisking them more vigorously than necessary. Just wanted to make sure everything was safe. Those police officers outside, they're going to be around for a few days, just a precaution. Because of the bad men who wanted to hurt that lady and her daughter? Yeah, because of that. Sophie was quiet for a moment, swinging her legs. "Are we in danger?" Evan paused, the whisk suspended over the bowl. He'd promised himself when Sophie was born that he'd never lie to her. Not about the big things. Kids could handle truth better than adults gave them credit for, and lies just made the fear worse when reality inevitably crashed through. "Maybe," he said finally. The man who hired those bad guys? He's angry that I interfered. He might try to scare us. But Sophie, I need you to understand something. He turned to face her fully. Nothing is going to happen to you. I won't let it. Those guards outside, they're good at their job, and I'm better, okay? She nodded slowly. Because you used to be a soldier? Evan's breath caught. What? Mrs. Chen told me once. She said you were a soldier before I was born, that you did important things. Sophie's eyes were too old for her face. Is that true? Yeah, it's true. Were you a good soldier? I was a very good soldier. The words tasted like ash. Maybe too good. Sophie considered this, then smiled. Then those bad men are really dumb. They picked a fight with the best daddy in the world who also used to be a super soldier. They're gonna lose. Despite everything, Evan laughed. Yeah, kiddo, they're gonna lose. He made her pancakes, her favorite, with chocolate chips arranged in a smiley face. They ate together at the counter, and for a few minutes it was almost normal, almost like any other morning, but then Sophie's eyes drifted to the window, to the guard visible on the fire escape, and the illusion shattered. Daddy? That little girl you saved, Lila, is she okay? She's fine. She's with her mom at the hospital. They're both going to be okay. Can I meet her sometime? I think we could be friends. We're almost the same age, and we both have really brave dads. She paused. Well, she doesn't have a dad anymore. Her dad is the bad guy. But maybe you could be like, I don't know, a friend dad? Evan's throat tightened. Maybe. We'll see. His phone buzzed, a text from Clara. Are you awake? Never went to sleep, he replied. Same. Can we talk? Not on the phone. The FBI agent thinks Marcus might have surveillance on my accounts. Evan frowned. If Marcus had that kind of reach, things were worse than he thought. Where? They're releasing me at 9. There's a coffee shop 3 blocks from the hospital. The Grind. Know it? I'll find it. Bring Lila. Sophie wants to meet her. Really? Really? 9:30? See you there? Evan pocketed his phone and turned to Sophie. How do you feel about getting pancakes out instead of the ones I just made? Sophie looked at her half-eaten breakfast, then back at him. Is this about the lady and her daughter? Smart kid. Okay, but I want hot chocolate too. Deal. They got ready quickly, Evan hyper-aware of the vulnerability of routine. He checked the hallway through the peephole before opening the door, spoke briefly with the guard, a solid-looking woman in her 30s who introduced herself as Officer Ramirez, and kept Sophie close as they descended to the parking lot. His sedan was still at the grocery store. The Honda he'd borrowed sat where he'd left it, and he made a mental note to return it properly and thank the couple again. But first, there was Mrs. Chen's nephew, who ran a body shop. A phone call, a promise of cash, and 20 minutes later, they were in a borrowed SUV with tinted windows and plates that wouldn't trace back to Evan immediately. Not perfect security, but better than being a sitting target. The Grind was a hipster coffee place with exposed brick and pretentious art on the walls, the kind of spot Evan normally avoided. But it had good sight lines, multiple exits, and at 9:30 on a Thursday morning, it was populated mostly by laptop warriors more interested in their screenplays than the people around them. Perfect. Clara and Lila arrived at 9:35. Evan spotted them through the window before they entered, Clara walking stiffly, one arm wrapped protectively around her ribs, Lila glued to her side. Both wore oversized sunglasses despite the overcast day, hiding the worst of their bruises. The bell chimed as they entered. Lila saw Sophie first, and her face lit up with something like recognition, like seeing a fellow survivor of some terrible shipwreck. Hi, she said shyly, approaching their corner booth. You're his daughter? I'm Sophie. You're Lila? Yeah. Lila glanced at her mother, who nodded encouragingly. Your dad saved my mom. He was really brave. Sophie beamed. I know. He's the best. Clara slid into the booth across from Evan, wincing at the movement. Up close, even with the sunglasses, he could see the swelling on her jaw, the split in her lip. But her eyes, dark brown and sharp, held no fear, only determination. Thank you for coming, she said quietly. I wasn't sure you would. Why wouldn't I? Because getting involved with me and my problems has already put you and Sophie in danger. Most people would run. Evan signaled the waitress, ordered 2 coffees and 2 hot chocolates. When they were alone again, he leaned forward. I don't run. Not anymore. And besides, I'm already involved. Marcus made sure of that when he sent his people to my building. Claire's hands tightened on the table. I heard. Evan, I'm so sorry. If I'd known... You'd what? Not sent your daughter to find help? Let yourself get beaten to death? He shook his head. No. Marcus did this. Not you. Don't take his blame. The FBI agent, Morrison, she came to see me this morning. She said Marcus is preparing for war, liquidating assets, calling in favors, hiring more muscle. Claire's voice dropped lower. She also said you refused witness protection. I'm not uprooting Sophie's life. Even if staying puts her in danger? Evan met her eyes. I can protect Sophie better than any safe house, and running just postpones the problem. Marcus won't stop. Men like him never do. So we end it here now, on our terms. Clara was quiet for a moment, studying him. Agent Morrison told me about Echo Division, about Istanbul. She said you were part of a unit that did impossible things. We tried. My father was there. Did I tell you that already? I can't remember. Last night is kind of a blur. Clara removed her sunglasses, revealing a black eye that made Evan's jaw tighten. He was Assistant Deputy Secretary of State, part of the delegation that got caught when the embassy was seized. He told me later that he thought he was going to die, that everyone thought they were going to die. The terrorists had already killed 2 hostages to prove they were serious. Evan remembered. God, he remembered. The sound of those gunshots, the screaming, the way his team had moved through the embassy like ghosts, because speed was everything, surprise was everything, and one mistake would have meant 43 body bags instead of 2. Your father was in the cultural attaché's office, Evan said quietly. 3rd floor east wing. He had a head wound from when they'd thrown him against the wall. He kept asking about his secretary, whether she'd gotten out. Clara's eyes widened. You remember him? I remember all of them. Every face, every name. Evan looked down at his hands. Your father, when we got to him, he was barely conscious. But when he realized we were American military, he started crying. Said he had a daughter back home. Said he'd promised to be at her graduation. Begged us not to let him break that promise. He made it, Clara whispered. He was there, front row, camera in hand, embarrassing me in front of everyone. A tear tracked down her cheek. Because of you. Because of my team. I was just one. Don't! Claire's voice was sharp. Don't minimize what you did. Agent Morrison showed me the after-action report. It's mostly classified, but she got me clearance because I'm involved now. Do you know what it said about you specifically? Evan didn't answer. It said that when the primary entry plan fell apart, when the terrorists started executing hostages, you went off script. You inserted Solo through a 3rd floor window while your team created a distraction. You neutralized 4 hostiles in 90 seconds with a knife because you couldn't risk gunfire alerting the others. You reached my father and 3 other hostages, got them to a secure room, then held that position against 8 armed men for 12 minutes until reinforcements arrived. Claire's voice shook. 12 minutes. The report said you took 3 bullets and didn't stop fighting. They had to physically drag you out because you refused to leave until every hostage was accounted for. Evan's shoulder throbbed at the memory. The report makes it sound more dramatic than it was. The report called it the single most effective solo hostage rescue in modern military history. Clara reached across the table, her hand covering his. My father knew your real name. He tried to find you afterward to thank you properly, but they told him you'd died, that the unit had been dissolved and all records sealed. He died believing you were gone. I was gone. The man who did those things, I left him in Istanbul. Did you? Clara's grip tightened. Because last night, when those men were going to kill me, when Lila was in danger, who showed up? The electronics repairman or the soldier? Evan pulled his hand back gently. It doesn't matter. What matters is stopping Marcus before he hurts anyone else. That's what I wanted to talk to you about. Clara glanced toward the kids who were engrossed in their hot chocolates and a coloring book the waitress had provided. Agent Morrison says they don't have enough evidence to arrest Marcus. The men you put down last night? Their lawyers showed up before dawn. 3 are already out on bail, and the other 5 aren't talking. Marcus has alibis for yesterday evening, witnesses who'll swear he was at his club, nowhere near my apartment. Of course he does. Morrison says the FBI has been building a case for 2 years. RICO charges, money laundering, ties to organized crime, but Marcus is careful. Everything goes through intermediaries. Nothing traces directly to him. They need someone on the inside to testify. Clara's eyes locked on his. They need me. Evan's instinct screamed warning. You testify against Marcus. You're painting a target on your back that never goes away. The target's already there. At least this way I'm fighting back instead of hiding. Clara pulled a folder from her bag, sliding it across the table. I was married to Marcus for 6 years. I know things. Names, transactions, meetings I sat in on because he thought I was too dumb or too scared to understand what I was hearing. I kept records, copies of documents, recordings of phone calls. Evan opened the folder. Inside were bank statements, photographs, what looked like shipping manifests. This is enough to put him away for 20 years, according to Morrison, but only if I survive long enough to testify. The trial wouldn't start for months, and Marcus won't wait that long. So you need protection. I need more than protection. I need someone who can think like Marcus, who can anticipate his moves before he makes them. Someone with the skills to keep me and Lila alive when he sends people to silence us. Clara's voice was steady, but Evan could hear the fear underneath. Agent Morrison is good at her job, but she's not you. She doesn't have your training, your experience. She's never faced someone truly determined to kill. And you think I have? I know you have. It's in your eyes, Evan, the way you assess every person who walks through that door, the way you positioned us in this booth, backs to the wall, clear sight lines to all exits, the way your hand keeps drifting to your pocket where I'm guessing you have a weapon. Clara's smile was sad. You've been to war. You've survived impossible odds, and right now that's exactly what I need. Evan was quiet, thinking. Everything she said made sense, but it also meant prolonged exposure to danger, meant putting Sophie at continued risk, meant stepping fully back into the life he'd spent a decade escaping. There's something else, Clara said, something Morrison doesn't know about yet. Last night, before the attack, Marcus called me. He was drunk, angry about the divorce settlement. He said things, specific things about his business, names of people he works with, politicians he owns, judges on his payroll. I recorded it. And Evan? She leaned closer. One of the names he mentioned was District Attorney Chambers, the man who'd be prosecuting his case. Evan's blood ran cold. Marcus owns the DA? He implied it, said something about Chambers owing him for his daughter's medical bills from 5 years ago, a transplant that cost $2 million. Insurance wouldn't cover it, but Marcus made it happen. Clara's voice dropped to barely a whisper. If the DA is compromised, then the whole case is compromised. Marcus could walk no matter what evidence we give them. Morrison needs to hear this. I know, but I wanted to tell you first, because if we're going to do this, if we're going to take down Marcus, we need to trust each other completely. And I need to know, are you in? Will you help me protect Lila and take this monster down, or are you going to walk away? Evan looked at his daughter, giggling with Lila over something in the coloring book. So innocent, so vulnerable. Every instinct he had screamed to grab Sophie and run, to disappear into some small town where Marcus Lane would never find them. But he knew it wouldn't work. Men like Marcus had long reaches and longer memories. Running just meant looking over their shoulders forever, and Sophie deserved better than a life lived in fear. I'm in, he said finally. But we do this smart. No heroics, no unnecessary risks. We gather evidence, we coordinate with Morrison, and we build an airtight case that even a compromised DA can't ignore. Agreed? Clara's smile was genuine this time. Agreed. And Clara? When this is over, when Marcus is behind bars and your life goes back to normal, we're done. I help you because it's the right thing to do, because I owe your father, because those kids deserve to be safe. But I'm not looking to become part of your world. I'm not looking for anything except to go back to being a dad who fixes broken electronics. Clear? Something flickered in Clara's eyes. Disappointment, maybe, or understanding. Clear. The bell over the door chimed. Evan's head snapped up, his body already tensing, ready to move. But it was just a businessman on his phone, oblivious to the tension in the corner booth. Clara noticed his reaction. You're always like this? Always watching? Since Istanbul, it's exhausting. I can't imagine. She gathered up the folder, tucking it back in her bag. So what's our first move? We get this information to Morrison. We tell her about the DA, then we set up secure locations for you and Lila, somewhere Marcus doesn't know about. My apartment isn't safe long term, and neither is yours. I have a beach house, 2 hours north under an LLC Marcus doesn't know about. I bought it after we separated, kept it completely off his radar. Security system, gated community, only one access road. Evan considered it. Isolated. That's good and bad. Good because it limits approaches. Bad because if they do find you, you're trapped. So we make sure they don't find us. We'll need supplies, cash, prepaid phones, medical kit, non-perishable food. I've got most of it already, but we'll need to scale up for 4 people. Evan's mind was already moving, planning, falling back into the patterns Echo Division had drilled into him. How soon can you access the beach house? Today, if needed. The keys are in a safety deposit box downtown. Then here's what we do. You and Lila go back to the hospital, act like you're staying another night for observation. I'll coordinate with Morrison, get the FBI read in on the DA situation. Tonight, around midnight, when the shift changes and people are tired, we move you to the beach house. No fanfare, no announcements, just disappear. And what about you and Sophie? We'll join you. Having all of us in one location makes security simpler. Evan paused. But Clara, you need to understand what this means. Once we go to ground, we stay there. No trips out for forgotten items. No phone calls to friends. No social media. We become ghosts until this is over. Can you do that? Clara looked at Lila, who was showing Sophie how to draw a butterfly. For her? I can do anything. Good. Give me your phone. She handed it over and Evan pulled up the settings, checking for tracking software. Clean, but that doesn't mean much. Marcus has resources. From now on, we assume anything digital is compromised. Use the phone I'm about to give you for any sensitive communication. He produced a burner phone from his jacket. Programmed with my number and Morrison's. Nothing else. When we leave here, your regular phone stays on. Keep it with you. Act normal. Let Marcus think he knows where you are. Won't that lead him right to us? Eventually. But by then, we'll be somewhere he can't track. Evan allowed himself a small smile. There are things Echo Division taught me that even the FBI doesn't know about. Tricks for disappearing when people with unlimited resources are looking for you. Clara pocketed the burner phone. You know, when Lila ran to you in that parking lot, I don't think she realized she was finding the one person in the city who could actually save us. Luck. I don't believe in luck. I believe in fate. Clara stood, adjusting her sunglasses. And I believe that my father, wherever he is, somehow guided Lila to you. Because who else could have stopped what happened last night? Who else would have? Evan didn't have an answer for that. He watched as Clara collected Lila, as the girls hugged goodbye with promises to see each other soon. Sophie looked up at him with those 2 knowing eyes. We're going to stay with them, aren't we? At their house? Yeah, for a little while. Think of it like a vacation. Some vacation, with armed guards and bad guys looking for us. But Sophie didn't sound scared. She sounded excited. It's like an adventure, like the stories you tell me before bed. This isn't a story, Soph. It's dangerous. I know. She took his hand. But we're together, and nothing bad happens when we're together, right? Evan squeezed her hand, wishing he could promise that. Wishing he could guarantee that his skills, his training, his willingness to do whatever it took would be enough. But he'd learned in Istanbul that sometimes, no matter how good you were, people died anyway. He pushed the thought away and led Sophie out of the coffee shop, his eyes already scanning for threats, his mind already running through contingencies. This was going to get worse before it got better. Marcus Lane wasn't going to roll over. He was going to fight back with everything he had. And when he did, Evan would be ready. The drive back to his apartment took 20 minutes through late morning traffic. Officer Ramirez was still on duty, now joined by a male officer who introduced himself as Chen. No relation to Mrs. Chen from 4B, he clarified with a slight smile. Everything quiet? Evan asked. Dead quiet, Ramirez confirmed. Although we did have a guy hanging around earlier, said he was from the power company, checking meters, had ID and everything, but something felt off. Evan's instincts flared. What time? Around 8. Chen checked his credentials. They were legitimate. They'd have to be if Marcus sent him. Did you get his face? Building camera caught him. Ramirez pulled out her phone, showing Evan a screenshot. The man was average height, average build, completely forgettable except for the way he held himself, too alert, too aware of his surroundings. Professional surveillance. He was casing the building, Evan said flatly, checking exits, guard patterns, vulnerabilities. You sure? I've done the same thing 100 times. He's Marcus's guy, which means they're planning something. Evan ushered Sophie inside quickly. I need to talk to Agent Morrison. Now. 10 minutes later, Morrison was on speakerphone, her voice tight with controlled anger. He's escalating faster than we anticipated. I've got teams on Marcus, but he's been stationary all morning, playing golf at his country club for Christ's sake. While his people scout targets, Evan finished. Classic compartmentalization. He's got plausible deniability while his assets do the dirty work. I don't suppose you'd reconsider witness protection? Not a chance, but I've got a better idea. Clara has a property Marcus doesn't know about. We move everyone there tonight. Let Marcus waste resources watching empty locations. Morrison was quiet for a moment. You're talking about going dark. No official protection, no backup if things go sideways. I'm talking about controlling the battlefield instead of letting Marcus choose it. You can keep teams on his known addresses, maintain the appearance of surveillance, but the real target, Clara and her testimony, will be somewhere safe. And if Marcus figures it out, if he finds you, then he finds someone ready for him. Evan's voice was cold. Your way, Morrison. Clara's a sitting duck with a security blanket that might not be thick enough. My way, she's a hardened target with someone who knows how to handle threats. Your way could also end with dead civilians and me explaining to my superiors why I let a civilian contractor run an off-books protection detail. I was never a contractor. I was a soldier. There's a difference. Not to the review board, there isn't. But Morrison's tone had shifted, moving from opposition to consideration. If I agree to this, and that's a big if, I need certain conditions met. Daily check-ins. Exact location, in case we need to extract you. And at the first sign of trouble, you call us. No cowboy shit. Understood? Understood. I'm serious, Turner. You might have been some kind of superhero back in your Echo Division days, but this is civilian law enforcement. We have rules, procedures. You can't just... Agent Morrison, Evan interrupted. With respect, your rules and procedures almost got Clara killed last night. She called 911. She followed the protocol. And by the time your officers arrived, she'd have been dead if I hadn't been there. So yeah, I'll check in daily. I'll keep you informed. But when Marcus's people come, and they will come, I'm going to stop them using whatever means necessary. If that's not acceptable, then protect Clara your way, and I'll take my chances with Sophie on my own. Silence stretched across the line. Finally, Morrison sighed. I could lose my job for this. But Clara and Lila will be alive. Seems like a fair trade. Where's this beach house? I'll text you the coordinates after we're secure. Not before. Jesus Christ, you really don't trust anyone, do you? I trusted my team in Istanbul. Half of them died anyway. So no, Agent Morrison, I don't trust easily anymore. Another pause. Fine. We do this your way. But Turner, you're responsible for those lives now. If something happens to Clara or her daughter, it won't. After he hung up, Evan spent the afternoon preparing. He had a go bag already packed, but now he expanded it. More ammunition for the pistol he'd kept hidden for years, more medical supplies, more cash. He called in favors from old contacts, people who'd served with him or adjacent to him, people who understood the need for discretion. A new vehicle was delivered at 5 p.m., a nondescript panel van with commercial plates and a false compartment in the floor. The man who delivered it, a grizzled former Marine named Kowalski, didn't ask questions, Just handed over the keys and a piece of paper with the location of a storage unit. Weapons cache, Kowalski said quietly. Not pretty, but functional. Everything's clean, can't be traced. You didn't get this from me. Never saw you before in my life. Kowalski grinned. Heard you were back in the game. Glad someone's looking out for the good guys again. You need backup, you call. Me and some of the old crew, we'd ride into hell for Echo. Appreciate it. Hope it doesn't come to that. Yeah, well, hope ain't a strategy. Watch your six, Turner. After Kowalski left, Evan sat Sophie down for a serious talk. She listened quietly as he explained they were going to stay with Clara and Lila for a while, that it might feel like hiding, but it was really about being smart, about not letting the bad men find them. I'm scared, Sophie admitted, but not because of the bad men, because you have that look again. The one that means you think something really bad might happen. Something bad might happen, Evan said honestly, but Sophie, I need you to trust me. Everything I'm doing, everything I've ever done, it's all been to keep you safe. You're my whole world, kiddo. Nothing matters more than you. I know, Daddy. She hugged him tight. That's why I'm not really scared, because you're the best at keeping people safe. That's your superpower. If only it were that simple, Evan thought. If only being good at violence meant being good at preventing it. Midnight came with a cold wind that promised rain. Evan loaded the van with their supplies, checked and rechecked his weapons, then made one final sweep of the apartment. He was leaving behind most of their life, photos, Sophie's toys, the accumulated debris of normal existence. But that could be replaced. Lives couldn't. At 12:15, they slipped out through the service entrance, avoiding the main lobby where the guards were stationed. Evan had explained his plan to Officer Ramirez, who hadn't liked it but understood the logic. She'd keep the detail in place, maintaining the illusion that the apartment was still occupied. The drive to the hospital was tense. Every set of headlights potentially hostile, every vehicle that followed them for more than 2 blocks a threat. But they arrived without incident. Clara and Lila were waiting in the service bay, both wearing dark clothes, looking like refugees from their own lives. Loading them into the van took less than 2 minutes. Evan had already disabled the hospital's external cameras with a discreet signal jammer, another Echo Division trick that Morrison definitely wouldn't approve of if she knew. Everyone in? He asked. Go, Clara confirmed, buckling Lila in next to Sophie. Evan pulled out slowly, lights off, until they were clear of the hospital grounds. Behind them, the city sprawled like a dying beast, all neon and shadow. Ahead lay the highway north, the beach house, and whatever came after. This was it, the point of no return. Once they disappeared, Marcus would know he'd been outmaneuvered. He'd escalate, get desperate, and desperate men made mistakes. Evan was counting on it. Because the thing about being Echo, about being the kind of weapon the military designed for impossible situations, you didn't just react to threats, you shaped the battlefield. You created conditions where your enemy's strengths became weaknesses. Marcus Lane had money, connections, resources. But he also had ego, had a need to be in control, and when things spun out of his control, he'd overreach, push too hard, expose himself. All Evan had to do was survive long enough to let that happen. He glanced in the rearview mirror. Sophie and Lila had fallen asleep against each other, exhausted by fear and adrenaline. Clara was awake, staring out the window, one hand absently touching her bruised ribs. Thank you, she said quietly, for all of this, for not walking away. Ask me again when this is over. You might not be thanking me then. Why not? Because staying close to me, it's like standing in a lightning strike zone. Sooner or later, the storm finds you. Clara turned to look at him, her expression unreadable in the darkness. Maybe I'm tired of running from storms. Maybe it's time to face them head on. That's the fear talking. Wait until you've actually been in a firefight. See if you feel the same way. You think Marcus will actually come himself? Or just send more hired thugs? Depends how desperate he gets. Right now he thinks he's untouchable. But when the FBI starts freezing accounts, when his paid witnesses start getting nervous, when he realizes his ex-wife has disappeared with evidence that could put him away for decades, Evan's hands tightened on the wheel. Then he'll come. And he'll bring everything he's got. Will we be ready? Evan thought about the weapons cache Kowalski had provided. about the beach house's security system, about his own skills honed by years of the most brutal training the military could devise. "We'll have to be," he said simply. The highway stretched ahead, empty and dark. 2 hours to the coast, 2 hours until they disappeared from Marcus Lane's radar, 2 hours to prepare for the war that was coming. In the back of the van, Sophie murmured something in her sleep. Evan couldn't make out the words, but he heard the tone, peaceful, trusting, safe. He'd do whatever it took to keep her that way, whatever it cost, whatever lines he had to cross, because that's what guardians did. They stood between the innocent and the dark. They held the line when everyone else ran. They became the monsters so that others didn't have to. Echo Division had taught him that. Istanbul had burned it into his soul. And tonight, as he drove 4 lives toward uncertain safety, Evan Turner accepted what he'd been running from for a decade. He was never going to be just an electronics repairman, never going to be just a regular dad with a regular life. He was Echo. He was the guardian. He was the man who ran toward gunfire while others ran away. And Marcus Lane was about to learn what happened when you threatened the people a man like that chose to protect. The rain started as they crossed the county line, drops spattering against the windshield like omens. Evan turned on the wipers and drove on into the storm, carrying his precious cargo toward whatever dawn would bring. Behind them, the city lights faded into memory. Ahead lay only darkness and the promise of violence. And somewhere in between, Evan Turner prepared to become what he'd always been, a weapon pointed at those who preyed on the innocent. The storm was coming. Let it come. He was ready. The beach house materialized from the darkness like a fortress carved from wood and glass. 3 stories of weathered cedar siding rose against the night sky, perched on stilts that elevated it above the dunes. The access road had been exactly as Clara described, a single lane of cracked asphalt that wound through saltgrass and scrub pine, ending at a gate that required both a code and a physical key. Evan parked the van in the covered carport beneath the house, his eyes already cataloging defensive positions. Good elevation, clear sight lines in 3 directions, the ocean at their back. Only one approach by vehicle, which meant any assault would be channeled and predictable. The security system panel by the door blinked red, armed, and waiting. "Clara," he said quietly, not wanting to wake the girls. "Walk me through the security." She climbed out stiffly, her ribs clearly bothering her despite the painkillers. Motion sensors on all windows and doors. Cameras covering the driveway, beach access, and perimeter. Everything feeds to a monitoring station, but I have it set to alert my phone instead of a security company. Change that. Give me admin access. If Marcus has the resources we think he does, he might have contacts in private security firms. Evan was already moving around the structure, testing sight lines, checking for blind spots. The stilts are a problem. Someone could plant charges underneath, bring the whole thing down. You really think he'd go that far? I think desperate men do desperate things, and we're about to make him very desperate. Evan completed his circuit, his mind already working through countermeasures. We'll need motion sensors under the house, tripwires on the beach approach, and someone needs to be awake and armed at all times. Claire's expression shifted from exhaustion to something harder. You're talking about a siege. I'm talking about being prepared. There's a difference. Evan checked his watch, 2:40 a.m. Let's get the girls inside. I want everyone settled before dawn. Harder to track our arrival if nobody sees us in daylight. They carried Sophie and Lila up the external stairs, the girls barely stirring as they were deposited on a plush sectional in the living room. The interior was exactly what Evan had expected from Claire's background, expensive but tasteful, all natural materials and muted colors designed to complement the ocean view. Floor-to-ceiling windows dominated the eastern wall, currently reflecting their own tired faces back at them like ghosts. Those windows have to be covered, Evan said immediately. Sheer curtains aren't enough. We need blackout capability. There are hurricane shutters, metal, reinforced. I can show you the controls. Do it. While Clara demonstrated the shutter system, a series of motorized panels that descended with a quiet hum, Evan conducted a room-by-room sweep. 3 bedrooms upstairs, open-plan living space on the main floor, storage and utility areas below. Multiple exits, which was good. Too many windows, which wasn't. He found Clara in the kitchen, making coffee with shaking hands. The adrenaline was wearing off, leaving behind the reality of what they were doing. of what she'd lost in the span of 24 hours, her home, her sense of safety, her normal life. "Hey," Evan said gently, "you did good. Getting out of the hospital without alerting anyone, staying calm for Lila, that takes strength." Clara laughed, but it came out broken. "I don't feel strong. I feel terrified. Every car that passed us on the highway, I thought it was them. Every shadow looks like someone coming to finish what they started." She sloshed coffee onto the counter, her hands trembling too badly to pour straight. "How do you live like this? Always watching, always waiting for the next attack?" "You get used to it." Evan took the coffee pot from her, filling 2 mugs. "And then one day you realize you can't not live like this. The hypervigilance becomes normal. Everywhere you go, you're counting exits, assessing threats, running scenarios. It's exhausting, but it's also what keeps you alive." "That sounds like hell." "It is." Evan handed her a mug. "But it's also why we're going to survive this. Because I've been living in that hell for 10 years, and I know how to navigate it." Clara wrapped both hands around the mug, seeking warmth. "Morrison called while you were checking the perimeter. She said they've frozen 3 of Marcus's accounts, about $40 million. His lawyers are already filing injunctions, but it'll take days to unfreeze the money." "Good. Financial pressure makes people sloppy." Evan sipped his coffee, the bitter heat cutting through his exhaustion. "What else?" "One of the men from the apartment, the wiry one with the knife, he's talking, gave up 2 other jobs Marcus hired him for. Assault, intimidation, 1 suspected arson. Morrison thinks they can build a conspiracy case. If the DA isn't compromised, she's looking into that, running financial forensics on Chambers, checking for any connection to Marcus beyond the daughter's medical bills." Clara set down her mug. "She also said you need to call her. Secure line." She didn't sound happy. Evan pulled out the burner phone and dialed. Morrison answered on the first ring. "Tell me you're somewhere defensible," she said without preamble. "Defensible enough. What's wrong?" "Marcus knows. He showed up at your apartment an hour ago with 6 men and a battering ram. Tried to force entry. Officer Ramirez stopped them, told him you'd relocated under police protection and she couldn't disclose the location. He went ballistic, started making threats, saying you'd kidnapped his wife and daughter." Evan's grip tightened on the phone. He's trying to spin this. Make himself the victim. It gets worse. He's filed a complaint with Internal Affairs, claiming you're a rogue vigilante who assaulted his employees and is now holding his family hostage. He's got 3 lawyers already preparing civil suits: false imprisonment, assault, emotional distress. And Turner? One of those lawyers is Gregory Haynes. Evan felt ice settle in his stomach. Haynes was legendary in legal circles, a fixer who specialized in making inconvenient problems disappear. Marcus is really pulling out all the stops. This isn't just about silencing Clara anymore. This is about destroying you. He's going after your custody of Sophie, filed an emergency motion claiming you're an unfit parent who's exposing his daughter to danger. Hearing is scheduled for tomorrow at 9 a.m. Can he do that? With Haynes? He can do anything. The man has judges in his pocket across 3 states. Morrison's voice was tight with anger. You need to bring Sophie back. Let Child Protective Services place her somewhere safe while this plays out. Absolutely not. The words came out harder than Evan intended. Sophie stays with me. Turner, be reasonable. If you don't show up tomorrow, the judge will rule in absentia. You'll lose custody by default. Then I guess I'm losing custody. Evan turned away from Clara, lowering his voice. I won't put Sophie in the system. Won't let her spend even one night with strangers, scared and alone, thinking I abandoned her. That's not happening. Even if it means losing her permanently? It won't be permanent. Once Marcus is behind bars, once the threat is neutralized, I'll fight whatever legal battles I need to fight. But right now, the safest place for Sophie is with me. Morrison was silent for a long moment. You're making this very difficult. I'm supposed to be building a case, not running interference for a fugitive custody battle. I'm not a fugitive. I've broken no laws. You're in violation of a police protection order. You've taken Clara and Lila from their designated secure location. And if that custody hearing goes the way I think it will, you'll be in violation of a court order too. Her sigh was heavy. I'm trying to help you, Turner, but you're not making it easy. Nobody ever said the right thing was easy. Evan watched through the kitchen window as the first hints of dawn began to gray the eastern horizon. How much time do we have before Marcus figures out where we are? Depends. If he's just using conventional resources, investigators, trackers, maybe 3 or 4 days. If he's got access to federal databases through his connections, could be hours. Morrison paused. There's one more thing. The guy who was casing your apartment this morning? We pulled surveillance footage from 3 other locations: the hospital, the coffee shop where you met Clara, and the body shop where you got the van. He was at all of them. Professional surveillance. Evan's mind raced. Which means he's been on us since last night. Could have tracking devices on the van. Possible. I'd suggest a thorough sweep. Already on my list. Evan glanced back at Clara, who was leaning against the counter, exhaustion written in every line of her body. Morrison, I need you to trust me. I know what I'm doing. I've protected people in far worse situations than this. Those were war zones with military rules of engagement. This is American soil with civilian law enforcement protocols. Very different scenarios. The principles are the same. Secure the asset, control the terrain, eliminate the threat. Eliminate? Morrison's voice sharpened. You're not eliminating anyone. This is a law enforcement operation, not a military strike. Figure of speech. I meant neutralize the threat through legal channels. But even as Evan said it, he knew it was a lie. If Marcus came with lethal force, Evan would respond in kind. No hesitation, no second guessing. Some lines, once crossed, couldn't be uncrossed. After hanging up, Evan spent the next hour conducting a detailed sweep of the van. He found 2 tracking devices, one magnetic unit stuck to the undercarriage, another hardwired into the vehicle's electrical system. Both were high-end commercial equipment, the kind private investigators used for spousal surveillance cases. He disabled both and placed them in a metal toolbox lined with aluminum foil, creating a makeshift Faraday cage. The signals would keep transmitting, but they'd just show the devices sitting stationary in the carport. Maybe buy them a few extra hours before Marcus realized he'd been duped. By the time he finished, dawn had broken fully. The ocean stretched before the house like hammered steel, gray and restless under an overcast sky. Evan stood on the deck, feeling the salt wind on his face, and allowed himself a moment of doubt. Was he doing the right thing, keeping Sophie here in the line of fire? Or should he have taken Morrison's advice, put her somewhere safe while he handled Marcus? But he knew the answer. Sophie's safety wasn't just physical, it was emotional, psychological. She'd already lost her mother at birth. Evan was her entire world, her anchor. Separating them would shatter something fundamental in her, and no amount of physical safety would compensate for that trauma. No, they stayed together. Whatever came, they faced it as a family. Daddy? Evan turned. Sophie stood in the doorway, rubbing sleep from her eyes, her stuffed bear dangling from one hand. Hey kiddo, you're up early. Bad dream. She patted over and Evan scooped her up despite his aching ribs. Where are we? Beach house, remember? We're staying with Claire and Lila for a while. Sophie looked out at the ocean, her eyes widening. It's pretty. Can we go swimming? Maybe later. Right now we need to stay inside. It's safer that way. Because of the bad men looking for us. It wasn't a question. Sophie had accepted the new reality with the resilience that children sometimes showed, the ability to adapt when adults were still reeling. Are they going to find us? I hope not. But if they do, I'll keep you safe. You know that, right? I know. She rested her head against his shoulder. Daddy, are you scared? Evan thought about lying, about giving her the reassuring platitudes that adults offered children, but he'd promised never to lie to her about the big things. Yeah, he admitted quietly. Yeah, I'm scared. Not for me, but for you. The thought of something happening to you, that terrifies me more than anything. But you're the bravest person I know. Bravery isn't not being scared. It's being scared and doing what needs to be done anyway. Evan kissed the top of her head. And right now, what needs to be done is keeping you safe. So we stay here, we follow the rules, and we wait for the police to arrest the bad man. Okay? Okay. Sophie was quiet for a moment. Daddy, when this is over, can we go back to normal? You and me, our apartment, Mrs. Chen's cookies? Yeah, sweetheart. We'll go back to normal. Even as he said it, Evan knew it was another lie. Nothing would be normal after this. The mask had been ripped away, the careful facade of ordinary life shattered. Even if they survived, even if Marcus went to prison, the truth of what Evan was would follow them forever. But Sophie didn't need to know that yet. Let her have her hope, her belief in happy endings. Soon enough, she'd learn that life was more complicated than that. The morning passed in tense domesticity. Evan set up a security station in the living room, positioning a laptop to monitor the camera feeds. Clara made breakfast, pancakes that neither adult could stomach, but the girls devoured with syrup-sticky enthusiasm. Lila and Sophie bonded over shared trauma in the way only children could, their laughter a surreal counterpoint to the adults' quiet preparations for violence. Around 11, Evan's burner phone buzzed. Unknown number. He stepped outside to answer. Mr. Turner, the same smooth voice from before. Marcus Lane. We need to talk. Nothing to talk about. Wait for your trial. See, that's where you're wrong, because I've been doing some research on you. Evan Turner, formerly of Echo Division. Very impressive service record. Istanbul, Mogadishu, that mess in Kazakhstan that officially never happened. You were quite the operator. Evan said nothing, his mind already analyzing. How had Marcus accessed sealed military records? What kind of reach did this man have? But here's what's interesting, Marcus continued. Your team leader in Echo Division, Captain Michael Reeves, died in Istanbul under questionable circumstances. The official report said hostile fire, but the classified addendum, oh yes, I've read that too, suggests friendly fire, suggests that someone on the team panicked, shot blind, and killed their own captain. Evan's blood ran cold. You don't know what you're talking about. Don't I? Because there were rumors, whispers that it was you, Turner, that you froze up, got scared, and when the shooting started, you put 3 rounds into your own commanding officer. Marcus's voice was poisonous honey. Is that why Echo Division dissolved? Is that why you ran away to play electronics repairman? Guilt? Captain Reeves died because of a terrorist ambush. He died a hero. Maybe. Or maybe he died because his subordinate wasn't as good as everyone thought. Maybe you've been playing at being a protector, when really you're just a coward who got lucky. Marcus laughed. How's it feel, Turner? Knowing that my lawyers are going to dig all this up in court? Knowing that by the time we're done, everyone will see you for what you really are, a fraud who got good men killed. Evan's hand tightened on the phone until it creaked. You come after my service record, you're making a mistake. Everything I did was legally sanctioned and classified. Classifications can be lifted, seals can be broken. I've got 3 senators and a federal judge in my pocket, Turner. I can expose anything I want. Marcus's voice hardened. So here's my offer. You give me back my wife and daughter, you disappear, and I'll let you keep your precious reputation intact. Sophie will never have to know her father's a coward and a killer. Sophie knows exactly who I am. And Clara isn't yours anymore. She made that choice when she divorced you. Clara made the choice I allowed her to make. Everything in her life exists because I permitted it. Her career, her money, her freedom, all of it stems from my generosity. And I'm done being generous. The smooth mask slipped, revealing rage underneath. You have 24 hours to return them. After that, I stop playing nice. I'll come for you with everything I have. I'll destroy your reputation, take your daughter, and make sure Clara and Lila understand the price of betrayal. You're welcome to try. You really think you can protect them all? You're one man, Turner. I've got 50 people I can call. Ex-military, ex-cops, men who do wet work for the right price. You're outnumbered, outgunned, and out of your depth. 50 men. Evan's voice was ice. You know how many hostiles my team faced in Istanbul? 83. Know how many we put down? All of them. So by all means, Marcus, send your 50. I'll add them to my count. He hung up and stood there, shaking with adrenaline and old memories. Istanbul. Captain Reeves. The classified addendum that Marcus somehow had access to. The truth was worse than Marcus's accusation. Reeves hadn't died from terrorist fire or friendly fire. He died because Evan had made a choice. A terrible, impossible choice between saving the captain and saving 12 hostages. And Evan had chosen the hostages. He'd left Reeves behind in a collapsing hallway, pinned by debris, while he'd extracted the civilians. By the time he'd fought his way back, Reeves was dead. The official report had been sanitized, the choice made to look inevitable. But Evan knew the truth. He'd chosen, and Reeves had died because of it. The memory was acid in his throat. He'd spent 10 years trying to outrun that moment, that choice, and now Marcus was going to weaponize it, use it to destroy what little peace Evan had found. Evan? He turned. Clara stood in the doorway, concern etched on her face. You okay? You look haunted? Evan tried to smile, failed. Marcus called. He's escalating, threatening to expose my service record, take Sophie, come after all of us with hired muscle. Can he do that? The service record part? If he's got the connections, he claims, yeah. Most of my Echo Division work is classified, but classifications have expiration dates, or they can be lifted by the right people asking the right questions. Evan leaned against the railing, suddenly exhausted. He knows about Istanbul, about how my commanding officer died. He's going to twist it, make it look like I was responsible. Were you? The blunt question caught Evan off guard. He looked at Clara, seeing not judgment but genuine curiosity. Yeah, I made a choice, Reeves or 12 hostages. I couldn't save both, so I saved the hostages. Then you did the right thing. Did I? Reeves had a wife, 2 kids. They grew up without a father because I made a calculation. Evan's voice was hollow. That's what Echo Division was about. Calculations. Acceptable losses. The greater good. We made the hard choices so politicians could keep their hands clean. Clara moved to stand beside him. My father told me something once, after Istanbul, after he came home. He said the soldier who saved him, you, had the saddest eyes he'd ever seen. Eyes that had witnessed terrible things and made terrible choices. But he also said those same eyes had been kind, that you'd held his hand while you bandaged his head wound, that you'd told him stories about your daughter-to-be to keep him conscious, that you'd treated him like a human being, not just an asset to extract. Evan remembered that. Remembered Clara's father, delirious from blood loss and fear, asking about his family. And Evan, covered in blood and moving on autopilot, talking about Sophie, not yet born but already real in his mind, already the reason he fought to survive each mission. He said you cried, Clara continued quietly. When you thought he couldn't see, you cried. And he realized that the men who'd saved him weren't unfeeling machines. They were just people carrying impossible weights. We weren't supposed to cry. Weren't supposed to feel. Feeling got people killed. Maybe, but feeling is also what made you human, what made you different from the men Marcus hires. Clara touched his arm gently. You're not a coward, Evan. You're not a killer. You're a man who made impossible choices in impossible situations, and you've spent 10 years punishing yourself for surviving when others didn't. Someone should punish me. No, someone should thank you. Clara's eyes were fierce. My father got to see me graduate college, got to walk me down the aisle at my wedding, got to hold Lila when she was born. He had 7 more years of life because of your choice. 40 other people had more years with their families. That matters. That counts. Evan wanted to believe her, wanted to accept that the math worked out, that the lives saved outweighed the lives lost. But grief wasn't math. Reeves's kids didn't care about acceptable losses or the greater good. They just knew their father wasn't coming home. Marcus is going to use this, he said finally. He's going to paint me as damaged, dangerous. By the time he's done, I'll look like exactly the kind of person who shouldn't be around children. Then we fight back. We tell the truth. We show what really happened. The truth won't matter. Haynes, Marcus's lawyer, he's too good. He'll twist everything until the jury sees what he wants them to see. Evan pushed off the railing. I need to make some calls, reach out to old contacts. If Marcus is coming with 50 men, I need to know exactly who we're dealing with. He spent the next 2 hours on the phone, reaching out to former Echo Division members who'd scattered to the wind after Istanbul. Most were dead, gone dark, or wanted nothing to do with the past. But a few responded. A few remembered what they'd been, what they'd stood for. Kowalski called back first. Heard you might have incoming. What do you need? Information. Marcus Lane is hiring muscle, ex-military, ex-law enforcement. I need to know who, how many, and what kind of capabilities they have. On it. I've got contacts in the contractor world. Give me 6 hours. Next was Rodriguez, who'd been Echo Division's intelligence specialist. Turner, thought you were dead. Got better. Need a favor. Name it. Marcus Lane. Everything you can find. Financial, personal, criminal. I need leverage. Rodriguez was quiet for a moment. Lane's connected. Deep. You sure you want to poke that hornet's nest? Already poked it. Now I need to burn it down. Your funeral. I'll send what I find to the secure drop. Check it in 3 hours. By afternoon, the picture was becoming clearer. Marcus had indeed hired a private military contractor, Aegis Solutions, a firm that specialized in executive protection and asset recovery. Translation. They grabbed people and hurt anyone who got in the way. The team being assembled was 12 men strong, all with military backgrounds, all with experience in hostile extractions. Not 50 men like Marcus had threatened, but 12 professionals were more dangerous than 50 amateurs. Kowalski called back with details. Your boy Marcus paid Aegis $2 million up front, another 2 on completion. The target package includes Clara and Lila, to be recovered unharmed, and you. You're marked as hostile, neutralized with extreme prejudice. Evan felt that cold settle into his bones again. They're authorized to kill me. Looks like it. Contract specifies no civilian casualties, but you're not classified as civilian. You're marked as a combatant. Kowalski paused. Evan, these guys are good. Team leader is former Delta, 3 others are ex-Rangers, the rest are various special operations. This isn't some street gang, this is a professional kill team. When? Unknown. But they're mobilizing now. I'd guess you've got 24 to 48 hours before they hit your location. After hanging up, Evan found Clara in the kitchen. We need to talk. He laid it out plainly. The contractor team, the kill authorization, the ticking clock. Clara listened without interrupting, her face going paler with each detail. So we run, she said when he finished. We pack up, move to a new location. And they'll just follow us again. Marcus has resources we can't match. Every time we move, we leave traces. Eventually, they'll corner us somewhere with worse defensive positions than this. Evan shook his head. No, we stay, we fortify, and we make this house somewhere they don't want to attack. You're talking about a siege, about fighting off 12 trained soldiers. I'm talking about making them think twice, about creating a situation where the cost of attacking outweighs the benefit. Evan pulled up schematics of the beach house on his laptop. We have advantages: single approach route, elevated position, cover, and concealment. If we're smart, we can make this place into a fortress. And what about the girls? They'll be terrified. They'll be alive. That's what matters. Evan met her eyes. Clara, I know this isn't what you signed up for. You wanted FBI protection, witness security, a normal process. But that's not what we got. We got Marcus with unlimited resources and no rules. So we adapt. We survive. And when it's over, when he's behind bars, then we can go back to normal. But until then, we fight. Clara was quiet for a long moment, staring at the schematics. Finally, she nodded. Okay, what do you need? Everything in your storage area. Tools, materials, anything I can use to reinforce this place. I need to create layered defenses. Something that'll slow them down, channel their approach, give us tactical advantage. They spent the rest of the day working. Evan wasn't a combat engineer, but Echo Division had taught him the basics of field fortifications. He rigged motion sensors under the house, attached to floodlights that would illuminate any approach from below. He created choke points on the stairs using furniture and debris, places where attackers would have to slow down, bunch up, expose themselves. In the storage area, he found Clara's late father's gun collection, hunting rifles, shotguns, even a vintage M1 Garand from World War II. Not ideal for close-quarters combat, but better than nothing. He cleaned and loaded each weapon, positioning them at strategic points throughout the house. Clara watched him work with a mixture of fascination and horror. You really know how to do all this? I really wish I didn't. Oh, Evan was running steel cable between support posts, creating tripwires. This used to be my life. Planning for violence, preparing for the worst. I spent 10 years trying to forget how. Guess it's like riding a bike. You never really lose it. Do you think it'll be enough? Against 12 professionals? Honestly, no. If they come in force all at once, we're overwhelmed. But if I can make them cautious, make them approach slowly, pick them off one or two at a time. Evan shrugged. Then maybe we survive long enough for the cavalry to arrive. Morrison and the FBI? Them? Or just the sheer logistics of a firefight at a beach house? Hard to have a private war when neighbors are calling 911 every 5 minutes. Clara looked out at the desolate stretch of coastline. Evan, the nearest neighbor is 2 miles away, and it's off-season. Most of these houses are empty until summer. Evan paused in his work. Then we're really on our own. That night, after the girls were asleep, Evan and Clara sat on the deck watching the moon rise over the ocean. The beauty of it, silver light on dark water, the eternal rhythm of waves, felt obscene given what was coming. My father used to bring me here, Clara said quietly. Before Marcus, before everything went wrong. We'd sit out here and he'd tell me stories about his diplomatic work. All the places he'd been, the people he'd met. He made the world seem so vast and full of possibility. She smiled sadly. I remember asking him once if he was ever scared. He said yes, all the time. But that being scared was proof you were alive. Proof you had something worth protecting. Wise man. He'd like you. Would have liked you, I mean. He respected people who stood up when it mattered, who made the hard choices. Clara turned to look at Evan. Is Sophie really worth all this? The danger, the violence, the risk? Sophie is worth everything. She's the only truly good thing I've ever created. Every decision I've made since she was born has been about making sure she grows up safe and happy and loved. Evan's voice was fierce. So yeah, she's worth it, and so are you and Lila. Nobody deserves what Marcus is doing. Nobody deserves to live in fear because some entitled asshole can't accept that he doesn't own people. Clara reached over and took his hand. Thank you. For caring. For fighting. For being the kind of man who runs toward danger instead of away from it. I'm really not that great. I've made mistakes. Done things I regret. Haven't we all? Clara squeezed his hand. But you're here now. That's what counts. They sat in comfortable silence, hands linked, watching the moon climb higher. In that moment, Evan allowed himself to imagine a different life. One where he'd met Clara under normal circumstances. Where Sophie and Lila became friends at school, where weekend barbecues and homework help were the extent of their adventures. But that life didn't exist. This one did. The one with hired killers on the way, with legal battles and custody hearings, with violence lurking just beyond the horizon. And Evan Turner was done running from it. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. The Aegis team closing in. Marcus pulling strings. The legal system grinding forward toward taking Sophie away. But tonight, for just a few hours, they had peace. Had the sound of waves and the moonlight and each other's company. It would have to be enough. Because when dawn came, the war would begin in earnest. And Evan would have to become Echo again, fully, completely, without reservation or regret. The Guardian was ready. The house was fortified. The weapons were loaded. Let them come. He'd be waiting. The assault came 36 hours later at 3 in the morning when human vigilance was at its lowest ebb. Evan had been expecting it, had been running on 2-hour sleep shifts with Clara taking watch when exhaustion forced him to close his eyes. But expecting something and experiencing it were different beasts entirely. The first indication was the motion sensors under the house going dark. Not triggered, dark. Someone had cut the power feeds, which meant they'd already penetrated the perimeter, were already underneath them in the shadows between the stilts. Evan was moving before the alarm fully registered, rolling out of his makeshift bed in the living room and grabbing the AR-15 he'd kept within arm's reach. His mind was already 3 steps ahead, running through scenarios, calculating angles of attack. Clara, he hissed into the darkness. She was supposed to be on watch, positioned by the security monitors. Talk to me. All cameras just went to static. Her voice was tight with controlled fear. I've got nothing. We're blind. They cut the feeds. Professional work. Evan moved to the window, peering through a gap in the hurricane shutters. Outside, the night was ink black, the moon hidden behind clouds. Perfect conditions for an assault. Wake the girls. Get them to the safe room, now. They'd prepared for this. The master bedroom had a reinforced closet with its own lock, stocked with water and supplies. Not ideal, but better than leaving Sophie and Lila exposed. Clara disappeared up the stairs, and Evan heard the quiet sounds of her rousing the girls, keeping her voice calm despite the terror she must have been feeling. Good. Panic was contagious, especially with children. Stay calm, project confidence, make them believe everything would be okay even when you knew it might not be. Evan's burner phone buzzed. A text from Kowalski. Aegis team left staging area 2 hours ago. 6 vehicles, full tactical loadout. Sorry, man, tried to warn you sooner. 6 vehicles meant the full 12-man team plus support. They'd come in force, overwhelming superiority, textbook military operation. Evan was outnumbered, outgunned, and about to face men whose training rivaled his own. The old fear tried to surface, the voice that whispered he wasn't good enough, wasn't fast enough, that Istanbul had been luck, and this time the luck would run out. Evan crushed it down with practiced efficiency. Fear was useful. Terror was deadly. He keyed the burner phone to Morrison's number, setting it to auto-dial every 5 minutes until someone answered. The FBI might not arrive in time to stop the assault, but they'd at least find the bodies and know what had happened. Cheerful thought. Clara reappeared, moving low and fast like he'd taught her. Girls are secured. What now? Now we make them pay for every inch. Evan handed her a shotgun, a Mossberg 500, simple and reliable. You remember what I showed you? Point, don't aim, let the spread do the work. Clara's hands were steady on the weapon. I'm not letting them take my daughter. Whatever I have to do. Stay behind me, watch our 6. And Clara? Evan met her eyes. If it goes bad, if they breach the safe room, there's a drainage pipe that leads to the beach. You take the girls and run. Don't look back. Don't wait for me. Just run. Evan, promise me. Clara's jaw tightened, but she nodded. I promise. The house groaned. Not wind, not settling, the groan of weight being applied to structural supports. They were climbing the stilts, multiple teams approaching from different angles. Evan moved to his primary defensive position, a reinforced corner with overlapping fields of fire, covering both the main entrance and the stairs from below. He'd spent yesterday preparing this exact spot, sandbags from the beach stacked to create cover, furniture positioned to channel attackers into kill zones. The front door exploded inward. Not kicked, not battered. Exploded. They'd used a breaching charge, a calculated amount of explosive that took the door off its hinges and sent it spinning into the room. The blast was deafening in the enclosed space, and Evan felt the overpressure like a physical blow. Before the smoke cleared, they came through. 2 men in full tactical gear, night vision goggles, moving with practiced coordination. The point man swept left, his rifle tracking while his partner went right. Evan dropped the first one with a 3-round burst to center mass. The man's body armor caught 2 rounds, but the third found the gap at his collarbone, and he went down hard. The second man was already firing, his rounds chewing into Evan's sandbag cover, but the angle was wrong and his shots went high. Evan rolled left, came up firing, and put 2 rounds through the man's knee. He collapsed screaming, and Evan's next shot ended the screaming permanently. No time for remorse. No time for anything except survival. Stairs! Clara shouted, and Evan spun to see 2 more figures emerging from the lower level. She fired the shotgun, the blast catching the lead man in the legs, and he tumbled backward into his partner. They both went down the stairs in a tangle of limbs and curses. Good shot, Evan managed, already moving to new cover. The breach team would have radioed the casualties, would be adapting their approach. Next wave would be more cautious, more deliberate. His phone buzzed. Morrison, finally. He answered on speaker, still scanning for threats. Turner, we're 30 minutes out. Hang on. 30 minutes might as well be 30 hours. I've got hostiles in the house. At least 2 down, maybe 10 more outside. Evan's voice was clipped, professional. If you hear shooting stop, assume we're dead and come in heavy. We're scrambling SWAT, Coast Guard, everyone we can. Just get here. Evan killed the connection as windows shattered simultaneously on 3 sides of the house. Flashbangs tumbled through, and he barely had time to squeeze his eyes shut before they detonated in strobing white chaos. The disorientation was immediate and total. Sound vanished into high-pitched ringing. Vision reduced to white afterimages. Balance went to hell as his inner ear revolted. But Echo Division had trained for this. Thousands of hours in kill houses, in simulated urban combat, learning to fight through sensory overload. Evan's body moved on autopilot, muscle memory taking over where conscious thought failed. He fired blind, sweeping his barrel across the known entry points, laying down suppressing fire. Couldn't see targets, but he knew where they'd be coming from, knew the natural flow of an assault on this structure. His vision cleared enough to see shapes moving through the smoke. 3 men, spreading out, trying to flank. Evan pivoted, dropped one with a headshot, put 3 rounds into another's center mass. The third got behind the couch, and Evan's rounds punched through the furniture but didn't find flesh. Clara fired again, and Evan heard someone scream. She was holding her position, covering their 6 like he'd instructed. Good. They might actually survive this. Then the ceiling above him exploded. Not explosive, not breach charge, just the sudden catastrophic failure of drywall and timber as 2 men dropped through from the 2nd floor, having cut their way through from above. Evan hadn't planned for that, hadn't considered they'd go vertical. Mistake, potentially fatal. He tried to bring his rifle around, but one of the men was already on him, had been falling with purpose and training, and they hit the ground together in a tangle. The rifle went flying. Evan's ribs, still injured from 2 nights ago, screamed protest. The man on top of him was huge, easily 240, and he was going for Evan's throat with hands that felt like steel bands. Evan tucked his chin, protecting his airway, and drove his thumb into the man's eye socket. The grip loosened fractionally, and Evan used the opening to get a hand free, fished the folding knife from his pocket. The blade snapped open. Evan drove it up under the man's jaw, through soft tissue and into his brain. The hands on his throat went slack, and Evan shoved the corpse aside, gasping for air. The second man through the ceiling had engaged Clara. She'd fired the shotgun but missed in her panic, and now he had her on the ground, trying to wrench the weapon away. Lila and Sophie's screams echoed from upstairs. The girls had heard the fighting, were terrified. Evan couldn't reach his rifle. Too far, and the man was going to kill Clara in the next 3 seconds. So he did the only thing available to him. He picked up a broken piece of timber from the destroyed ceiling and swung it like a baseball bat, connecting with the side of the man's head. The crack was sickeningly wet, and the man dropped like a puppet with cut strings. Clara scrambled backward, her face spattered with blood. Not hers, Evan noted clinically. "Oh God! Oh God!" "Stay focused." Evan retrieved his rifle, his eyes already scanning for the next threat. "How many rounds left in the shotgun?" I don't know." "Check, now." His voice was harder than he intended, but there was no time for gentleness. "We're not done yet." Clara fumbled with the shotgun, her hands shaking. 3. I think 3. "Make them count." A voice from outside, amplified by a bullhorn. "Turner, we know your former Echo Division. You know how this ends. You're outnumbered, outgunned, and out of time. Send out Clara Lane and her daughter. You and your kid walk away. Simple exchange." Evan moved to the window, risking a quick glance outside. He counted 4 men in cover positions, probably 2 more he couldn't see. 6 left, maybe 7. They'd lost half their team in the initial assault. "What about my offer?" he shouted back. "You pack up and leave. I don't kill the rest of you. Clock's ticking. FBI's on the way." Silence from outside. Then, "We monitored your call. 30 minutes, you said. We can accomplish our mission and be gone in 15. Last chance, Turner. Be smart." "Smart went out the window when Marcus Lane hired you to kidnap a woman and her daughter." Evan's voice carried across the night. "You're not private security. Your kidnapper's working for a criminal. That's conspiracy, assault, attempted murder. Every one of you who walks away now might see the outside of a prison cell again. But you keep pushing, you're all going down." More silence. They were conferring, weighing options. Evan used the time to reload, to assess their situation. 4 confirmed kills. Possibly 5 if the guy who took the timber to the head didn't get up. Maybe 7 hostiles remaining. Ammunition running low. He had 1 full magazine left, plus whatever was in the hunting rifles Clara's father had collected. The safe room door opened upstairs. Sophie appeared at the railing, her face streaked with tears. "Daddy?" "Get back inside!" Evan's command came out harsher than intended, born of fear. Sophie flinched, and he saw her face crumple. "Sophie, please. Get back in the safe room and lock the door. Please, baby." She disappeared, and Evan heard the lock click. Good. Better she hate him for being harsh than die because she was exposed. Clara touched his arm. "They're going to rush us, all at once. Overwhelm our defenses." "Probably." Evan checked his watch. 23 minutes since Morrison's call. 7 minutes since it ended. The math was brutal and simple. "Can you shoot to kill if you have to?" "I already did." Clara's voice was hollow. "The man on the stairs. I saw his face when I pulled the trigger. He looked surprised. Then he looked dead. That feeling, the sick horror of it, that's normal. Means you're human. But Clara, you need to push it down. Deal with it later. Right now, we need you functional." "I know." She squared her shoulders. "I can do this. For Lila, for Sophie, I can do whatever I have to." The assault came exactly as predicted. All remaining hostiles simultaneously from multiple entry points. East windows, west windows, front door, back deck. They'd abandoned caution in favor of overwhelming force. Evan met them with everything he had. The AR-15 barked in controlled bursts, each 3-round group finding targets. A man coming through the east window took rounds to the chest and face. Another on the deck caught fire from Clara's shotgun and went down hard. But there were too many, coming too fast. Evan's rifle clicked empty. No time to reload. He dropped it, grabbed one of the hunting rifles. The old M1 Garand, still loaded from yesterday. The action was stiff, the trigger pull heavy compared to modern weapons, but it worked. Each shot was a thunderclap, the 30-06 rounds punching through body armor like tissue paper. 2 more down. 3. But they were inside now, spreading through the house, and Evan couldn't cover every angle. A figure appeared on the stairs to the second floor. Evan swung the Garand around, but Clara was faster, her last shotgun shell catching the man square in the chest. He tumbled backward, and Evan heard him crash into something upstairs, near the safe room, too close to the girls. "Cover the main floor," Evan commanded, dropping the Garand and pulling his pistol, a Glock 19, 15 rounds. "I'm going up." "Evan, wait." But he was already moving, taking the stairs 3 at a time. His ribs were agony, his shoulder screaming, but none of that mattered. What mattered was the safe room door, currently closed and locked, and the body lying in front of it. The man Clara had shot was still alive, gasping, trying to key his radio. Evan kicked the radio away and pressed his pistol to the man's head. "How many left?" The man's eyes were glazing. "Go to hell." "You first." Evan pulled the trigger. The shot was impossibly loud in the confined hallway. From inside the safe room, Sophie and Lila screamed. Evan moved to the door, speaking urgently. "It's me. It's Daddy. Don't open the door. Stay locked in. I'm going to end this." "Daddy, I'm scared." Sophie's voice was tiny, broken. "I know, baby. I know. Just stay quiet and stay hidden. This'll be over soon, I promise." He moved back toward the stairs, and that's when he saw him. The team leader, the former Delta operator Kowalski had mentioned. Tall, controlled, moving with the kind of precision that came from 1,000 combat drops. He had Clara on her knees, his pistol pressed to the back of her head. "Drop it," the man said calmly, "or she dies." Evan froze, his pistol still raised but not aimed. "You kill her, you lose your payday. Marcus wants her alive. Marcus wants her compliant. Bullet in the leg accomplishes that just fine." The man's eyes were cold, professional. "You're good, Turner. Better than I expected. But it's over. My men are down, FBI's probably 5 minutes out, and this whole thing's gone to shit. So here's the play. You drop your weapon. I take Clara. You and your kid go free. Simple." Nothing simple with Marcus Lane. True. But right now, I'm your best option. Because if you don't drop that gun in the next 3 seconds, I'm going to shoot her just to spite you for killing my team. The man's finger tightened on the trigger. 1. Evan's mind raced through options. He could shoot, but from this angle, through Clara, with her head in the way, risky at best, fatal to her at worst. He could rush, but 10 feet was too far. He'd never close the distance before the shot. 2. Or he could trust. could believe that this man, this professional, would honor his word, that once Evan was disarmed, Clara would walk out alive. But Evan had been in this business too long to believe in honor among killers. 3. Evan fired. Not at the man. At the floor between Clara and her captor, close enough that the ricochet and splinters made the man flinch, made him jerk backward fractionally. Clara dropped flat, and Evan's second shot took the man in the throat. He staggered, his pistol discharging into the ceiling, and Evan's third and fourth shots finished what the first had started. The team leader collapsed, and sudden silence filled the house. Not peace, just the absence of gunfire, of shouting, of chaos. The kind of silence that came after battles, heavy with the weight of what had been done. Evan helped Clara to her feet. She was shaking violently, her teeth chattering despite the warm night. You could have hit me. I know, I'm sorry. It was the only play. Evan was shaking too, adrenaline crash hitting hard. Are you hurt? No, yes, I don't know. Clara looked around at the carnage, bodies sprawled across her beautiful beach house, blood soaking into expensive carpets, the smell of cordite and death thick in the air. Oh God, what did we do? We survived. Evan moved through the house, checking each body, making sure no one was playing dead, no one was calling for backup. 12 men had come for them. 12 men weren't leaving. The math was brutal, necessary, but brutal nonetheless. Sirens wailed in the distance, growing closer. The cavalry was finally arriving, too late to help, but in time to clean up the mess. Evan moved to the safe room door, knocked gently. Sophie, Lila, it's over. You can come out now. The lock clicked. The door opened. 2 little girls stood there, faces pale, eyes wide with trauma that would take years to process. Sophie looked at him, at the blood on his clothes, the gun in his hand, the bodies visible down the hallway, and something in her expression broke Evan's heart. She looked at him like he was a stranger, like he was something to fear. Daddy? Her voice was so small. Did you kill all those people? Evan wanted to lie, wanted to say no, wanted to protect her from the truth of what he was, what he'd done. But he'd promised never to lie about the big things. Yeah, sweetheart, I did. To protect you and Lila and Clara. I'm sorry you had to see this. Sophie didn't run to him like she usually did. Didn't rush into his arms seeking comfort. She just stood there, processing, trying to reconcile the father she knew with the killer she'd just witnessed. Lila broke first, running to Clara and burying her face in her mother's legs. Clara sank down, holding her daughter, murmuring reassurances that probably rang hollow given the scene around them. But Sophie just stared at Evan, and he saw the exact moment when childhood innocence died in her eyes. The moment when she understood, truly understood, that the world was darker and more violent than she'd ever imagined, and that her father was part of that darkness. I had to, Evan said, hating how inadequate the words were. Sophie, I had to keep you safe. I know. 2 small words, but they carried the weight of understanding, of acceptance, of loss. I know, Daddy. The first FBI vehicles roared up the access road, their lights strobing through the windows. Morrison's voice on a bullhorn, commanding everyone to come out with their hands up. Evan set his pistol down carefully, raised his hands, and walked toward the door. Behind him, Clara was gathering Lila, preparing to face the questions, the investigation, the aftermath. And Sophie stood in the safe room doorway, her bear clutched to her chest, watching her father walk toward federal agents with his hands raised like a criminal. Because that's what he looked like, what the scene looked like. 12 dead bodies, 1 man standing, and a story that would sound insane when told in the harsh light of day. The agents swarmed in, guns drawn, shouting commands. Evan complied with everything, moving slowly, staying calm, projecting no threat. They cuffed him anyway. Procedure, necessary, he understood. They cleared the house room by room, their professional calm fracturing when they saw the carnage. Morrison appeared, her face pale in the harsh LED lights the agents had set up. She looked at Evan, at Clara, at the bodies, and her expression cycled through shock, anger, and something that might have been respect. Jesus Christ, Turner. She moved closer, lowering her voice. What the hell happened here? 12-man contractor team. Aegis Solutions, hired by Marcus Lane. They came to extract Clara and Lila, Kill me. We defended ourselves. Evan's voice was flat, emotionless. The post-combat shutdown was kicking in, his mind protecting itself from what he'd done. It's all on the security footage. Everything's documented. The cameras were dead. I have a backup system, local storage, hidden. It's all there. Evan met her eyes. This was self-defense. They breached, we responded. Clean shoot. Morrison studied him for a long moment. Turner, there are 12 dead men in this house. 12. And you're standing here without a scratch. That doesn't look like self-defense. That looks like a massacre. Then look at the footage. Look at the evidence. And ask yourself, if we were the aggressors, why would we have called you? Why would we have documented everything? Evan's voice was cold. We did what we had to do to survive. Nothing more, nothing less. This is going to be a nightmare to investigate. A legal shitstorm. Morrison shook her head. But you're right. You called us. You tried to get help. And they came armed for war. She signaled to the agents. Uncuff him. He's a witness, not a suspect. The cuffs came off, and Evan rubbed his wrists, looking past Morrison to where Sophie stood with a victim advocate, wrapped in a blanket. She was staring at him, and Evan couldn't read her expression, couldn't tell if she was traumatized, terrified, or just processing. I need to talk to my daughter. Not yet. We need statements from everyone, separately, standard protocol. Morrison's expression softened slightly. She's safe, Turner. The advocate is trained for this. Sophie's going to be okay. Is she? Evan heard the break in his voice. She just watched her father kill a dozen men. How is that okay? It's not, but it's survivable. Morrison touched his arm briefly. You saved her life. You saved all of them. That counts for something. Maybe. Or maybe he'd just shown Sophie exactly what kind of monster her father really was. Maybe saving her life meant losing her trust, her love, her belief that he was a hero and not just another killer. The investigation stretched through the night and into the following day. Statements were taken, recorded, transcribed. The footage from Evan's hidden cameras was reviewed frame by frame, confirming his account. The dead men were identified. All contractors with Aegis Solutions, all with military backgrounds, all carrying weapons and equipment consistent with a tactical assault. By noon, the preliminary determination was made, justifiable homicide in defense of self and others. There would be a grand jury review, formal legal proceedings, but Morrison assured Evan the evidence was overwhelmingly in his favor. Marcus is going to claim you murdered his employees, she warned. His lawyers are already spinning this as a massacre, saying you lured those men into a trap. Let them spin. The evidence tells the truth. Evidence can be interpreted different ways. And Marcus has Haynes, remember? That man can convince a jury that up is down and black is white. Morrison pulled out her tablet, showing him news footage. It's already hitting the media. Beach House Massacre is trending. You're being painted as either a hero or a psychopath, depending on which channel you watch. Evan looked at the screen, seeing his own face. A photo from his military days, much younger, still believing in simple things like right and wrong. I don't care about the media. I care about Sophie. Sophie is with her advocate and a child psychologist. They're assessing her mental state, determining what kind of support she'll need. Morrison hesitated. Turner, I have to tell you something. The custody hearing? It went forward this morning. You didn't appear, and the judge ruled in Marcus's favor by default. He's been granted emergency custody of Sophie pending a full evaluation. The words hit Evan like a physical blow. What? Marcus's lawyers argued that you're a danger to your daughter, that you exposed her to violence, trauma, psychological harm. And given what happened last night, Morrison looked genuinely sympathetic. The judge didn't have much choice. You weren't there to contest it. The evidence presented made you look unstable. I was being shot at, Evan's voice rose. I was protecting her from the men Marcus sent. I know. And we're already filing an emergency motion to reverse the custody order. But Turner, it's going to take time, days, maybe weeks. And until then, Sophie goes into the system. Foster care, probably. Maybe with Mrs. Chen from your building if she passes the background check. No. The word came out quiet, deadly. No, that's not happening. Sophie stays with me. You don't have a choice. The court order is binding. Morrison's expression hardened. And if you run, if you take Sophie and disappear, you'll be a fugitive. Everything you've done to protect her becomes meaningless because you'll have proven Marcus right, that you're dangerous, unstable, unfit. Evan wanted to argue, to fight, to grab Sophie and run until they found somewhere safe. But Morrison was right. Running would just confirm every accusation Marcus had made, would turn him from a victim defending his family into a criminal kidnapping his own daughter. How long? He asked quietly. How long until the motion is heard? 3 days minimum, maybe 5. Morrison's voice was gentle. I'm sorry, Turner. I know this isn't fair, but the law is the law. We have to trust the system. The system just gave my daughter to the man who tried to have us killed. No, the system put your daughter in protective custody while it sorts out a complicated situation. There's a difference. Morrison stood. Go see Sophie. You've got an hour before child services arrives. Make it count. The hour passed in a blur of tears and desperate reassurances. Sophie clung to him, and Evan held her like she was the only solid thing in a dissolving world. He told her he loved her, that this was temporary, that he'd fix everything. He lied and told her it would all be okay. And Sophie, wise beyond her years, looked at him with those knowing eyes and said, It's okay, Daddy. I know you did what you had to do. I'm not scared of you. I'm just scared. Of what, baby? That they'll take you away. That I'll lose you like I lost Mommy. Her small hands gripped his shirt. Promise you won't go away. Promise you'll come back for me. Evan made a promise he wasn't sure he could keep. I promise, Sophie. No matter what happens, no matter how long it takes, I will come back for you. Always. When child services arrived, when they gently pried Sophie's hands from his shirt, when she was led away sobbing and looking back over her shoulder, that was when something inside Evan Turner finally shattered completely. He'd survived Echo Division. He'd survived Istanbul. He'd survived a dozen firefights and impossible odds. But watching his daughter being taken from him, knowing he was powerless to stop it, knowing that Marcus Lane had won this battle even while losing the war, that broke him in ways that bullets never could. Clara found him on the deck an hour later, staring at the ocean with dead eyes. Evan? She's gone. They took her. His voice was hollow. I killed 12 men to protect her, and they took her anyway. Clara sat beside him. Morrison says it's temporary, that we'll get her back. Maybe. Or maybe the judge looks at what happened and decides, I'm too dangerous, too violent, too damaged. Evan's laugh was bitter. Maybe they're right. Maybe Sophie's better off without me. Don't say that. Don't you dare say that. Claire's voice was fierce. Sophie loves you. She needs you. And yes, what happened last night was traumatic. But you saved her life. You saved all of us. That matters. Does it? Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like everything I've done has just made things worse. Evan closed his eyes. I should have run when I had the chance. Taken Sophie and disappeared. We'd be in Canada or Mexico by now, starting over, and she'd still be with me. And you'd be a fugitive. Sophie would grow up knowing her father was running from the law. Is that really better? Evan didn't have an answer for that. Maybe it was. Maybe not. All he knew was that his daughter was gone, taken by a system that was supposed to protect her, and the man responsible for all of it, Marcus Lane, was still free. His phone buzzed. A text from Kowalski. Heard about custody. That's rough, brother. What do you need? What did he need? He needed Sophie back. He needed Marcus Lane in a cell where he couldn't hurt anyone else. He needed the last 3 days to have never happened, to go back to the simple life of electronics repair and homework help. But that life was gone. Burned away in gunfire and blood. All that remained was this, the aftermath, the legal battles, the long fight to reclaim what Marcus had stolen. Evan typed back, evidence. Everything we can get on Marcus, every crime, every dirty deal, every skeleton in every closet. I want enough to bury him so deep he never sees daylight again. Kowalski's response was immediate. On it. Rodriguez and I are already digging. We'll find it. Morrison appeared at the deck door. Turner, we need to go. Press is starting to gather. Questions you need to answer, statements to make. I'm not making any statements. You don't have a choice. Your face is on every news channel. You're either a hero or a murderer depending on who's talking. You need to control the narrative before Marcus's people control it for you. Morrison's expression was firm. So you're going to put on a clean shirt, face the cameras, and tell the truth. All of it. What Marcus did, what his men did, what you did to survive. Let the public decide who the real villain is. Evan wanted to refuse, wanted to hide from the cameras and the questions and the judgment. But Morrison was right. Silence would be interpreted as guilt, and he needed every advantage in the court of public opinion if he wanted any chance of getting Sophie back. So he faced the cameras, stood before a dozen microphones and twice as many lenses, Clara beside him with Lila in her arms, and told the story. The attack on Clara, the threats against Sophie, the contractors sent to kidnap and kill. He laid it out clinically, emotionlessly, the way he'd once briefed missions. The questions came fast and brutal. Did he regret killing 12 men? No, he regretted that they'd forced him to. Would he do it again? In a heartbeat, to protect his daughter. What did he want the public to know? That Marcus Lane was a criminal who used wealth and connections to abuse people, and that the system designed to stop men like him had failed. It was raw, honest, probably too honest for Morrison's comfort. But Evan was done with calculations and careful politics. Sophie was gone. His life was in ruins. The only thing left was the truth, and maybe, just maybe, the truth would be enough. The press conference ended, and Evan retreated back into the beach house, now a crime scene being processed by forensics teams. Every surface was dusted, every bullet hole photographed, every drop of blood cataloged. His fortress had become a museum to violence, and he couldn't stand being there. Clara, I need to get out of here. Where will you go? Good question. His apartment wasn't safe. The beach house was a crime scene. He had nowhere that wasn't tainted by Marcus's reach or the memories of what had happened. I don't know. Hotel, maybe. Somewhere quiet where I can think. Clara's hand found his. Stay with us. Morrison arranged a safe house, FBI protection, actual federal agents instead of just local police. You, me, Lila, will wait this out together. Sophie should be there too. She will be. Soon. We'll get her back, Evan. I promise. He wanted to believe her. Wanted to think that the system would work, that justice would prevail, that everything would return to some version of normal. But he'd seen too much, lived through too many failures of systems and institutions, to have faith anymore. All he had was determination. The bone-deep knowledge that he would not stop, would not quit, would not rest until Sophie was home safe and Marcus Lane was destroyed completely and permanently. The war was far from over. Marcus still had his freedom, his money, his connections. He'd lost 12 men, but he could hire 12 more. Could hire 100 more. The man's resources were effectively unlimited, but so was Evan's determination. And that, in the end, might be the only advantage he needed. He followed Clara to the FBI vehicle waiting outside, leaving behind the beach house and its ghosts. Ahead lay legal battles and political maneuvering, testimony and hearings, and the grinding wheels of justice. But somewhere in all that noise and chaos, there was a path that led back to Sophie. And Evan Turner would walk that path, no matter what it cost, no matter what he had to become. The Guardian had paid the price in blood. Now he'd pay it in patience, in persistence, in the slow, suffocating work of destroying Marcus Lane from the inside out. Let them take his daughter for now. Let them think they'd won. Because when the dust finally settled, when all the legal maneuvering was done, Marcus Lane was going to learn what Echo Division had taught Evan so long ago. Some battles were won with bullets, others were won with time, evidence, and absolute refusal to surrender. And Evan Turner had never surrendered in his life. He wasn't about to start now. The FBI's safe house was a nondescript ranch home in a suburb 40 miles from the city, the kind of place where neighbors minded their own business, and surveillance cameras were considered paranoid overkill. Evan hated it on sight. Too many blind spots, too many approaches, residential density that made defensive planning a nightmare. But Clara and Lila needed protection, and his personal preferences didn't factor into the equation anymore. The first 3 days without Sophie were the longest of Evan's life. He called Mrs. Chen twice daily, who'd passed the background check and taken temporary custody. The older woman assured him Sophie was eating, sleeping, going to school, but there was something in her voice, a careful neutrality that suggested things weren't as simple as she made them sound. "She asks about you constantly," Mrs. Chen finally admitted on the fourth day. "Wants to know when you're coming home. I tell her soon, but Mr. Turner, she cries herself to sleep every night. That child needs her father." "I'm working on it," Evan said, his throat tight. "Tell her I love her. Tell her every day, please." "I do. But it would mean more coming from you." Except Evan wasn't allowed direct contact. Court order, pending the custody evaluation. Any communication had to go through approved channels, supervised visits only, and those were still being arranged. Marcus's lawyers were fighting every step, claiming Evan's presence was psychologically damaging to Sophie. The irony was suffocating. The man who'd sent 12 contractors to kill them was arguing that Evan was the dangerous one. Rodriguez delivered the first major breakthrough on day 5. He arrived at the safe house with a laptop and the kind of expression that suggested he'd found something big. "Marcus Lane is dirty in ways I didn't think were possible," Rodriguez said, spreading files across the dining table. "Money laundering through shell companies in the Caymans, bribes to 3 city councilmen, payments to judges, including District Attorney Chambers just like Clara suspected. But that's not the good part." Evan leaned forward. "What's the good part?" "The good part is that Marcus got sloppy 6 months ago, had a business partner who wanted out of their arrangement. Guy named Vincent Caruso ran logistics for Marcus's various enterprises. Caruso tried to leave, threatened to go to the feds if Marcus didn't let him walk with his share of the profits." Rodriguez pulled up a document. "Marcus had him killed. Made it look like a robbery gone wrong. But Caruso was smart. He left an insurance policy." "What kind of insurance?" "The kind that documents everything. Financial records, recorded conversations, photographs of meetings. Caruso gave it all to his lawyer with instructions to release it if anything happened to him. Lawyer's been sitting on it for 6 months, too scared of Marcus to do anything." Clara moved closer, reading over Evan's shoulder. "So we get the lawyer to release it." "Already tried. Lawyer's terrified. Said he'd rather go to prison for obstruction than cross Marcus Lane." Rodriguez shook his head. "But here's the thing. The lawyer's daughter is getting married next month. Small ceremony, private estate, very exclusive, and Marcus is invited." Evan saw where this was going. "We get to Caruso's lawyer at the wedding, away from Marcus's surveillance, away from his normal security. Make him understand that Marcus is going down either way, and he can either be part of the solution or get buried in the rubble." "Exactly. But there's a problem." Rodriguez pulled up another document. "The wedding is invitation only, and security is being handled by Marcus's people. He's paranoid after what happened at the beach house. Nowhere he goes now is without at least 6 armed guards." "Then we need an invitation." Evan looked at Clara. "You were married to him. You know his social circles? Who's getting married?" "Jonathan Brenner's daughter. Old money family, very connected." Clara's eyes widened. "Evan, the Brenners and Marcus go back decades. There's no way they'd give us an invitation after everything that's happened." "We don't need them to give it. We need to take it." Evan's mind was already working through scenarios. "Rodriguez, can you get us the guest list?" "Give me 4 hours." While Rodriguez worked his contacts, Evan placed a call to Kowalski. The grizzled Marine answered on the first ring, and Evan could hear traffic in the background. "Talk to me." "I need a team. 3 people, maybe 4. Experienced, trustworthy, willing to bend some laws for a good cause." "What kind of laws we talking about?" "Trespassing, maybe impersonation. Nothing violent. We're crashing a wedding to get evidence that'll take down Marcus Lane." Kowalski whistled low. "That's ballsy. I like it. Give me the details. I'll round up some of the old crew." By evening, the plan was taking shape. Rodriguez had obtained the guest list, 242 people, including several senators, a federal judge, and enough wealth to fund a small country. Among them was Gregory Haynes, Marcus's lawyer who'd be attending with his wife. "Haynes is the secondary target," Evan explained, spreading photos across the table. "If we can't get to Caruso's lawyer, we lean on Haynes. He knows everything about Marcus's operation. We get him on record admitting to obstruction, witness tampering, conspiracy, anything that breaks attorney-client privilege." Morrison, who'd arrived for the planning session, looked skeptical. You're talking about orchestrating a sting operation at a private wedding. Without official authorization. If this goes wrong, you'll all be arrested. If this goes right, we get enough evidence to destroy Marcus completely. Worth the risk. Evan met her eyes. Unless you want to do this officially, get warrants, subpoenas, go through proper channels, you know that'll take months, and Marcus's lawyers will fight every step. Morrison was quiet for a moment, clearly wrestling with her conscience. What do you need from me? Nothing official. But if we happen to record something useful, it would be a shame if the FBI didn't receive an anonymous tip about where to find it. Morrison almost smiled. I can work with anonymous tips, but Turner, if anyone asks, I knew nothing about this conversation. The wedding was in 3 days. Kowalski assembled his team, 3 former Echo Division members who'd scattered after Istanbul but still remembered what they'd stood for. Marcus, who'd been a sniper and still had the steady hands. Elena, who'd handled infiltration and spoke 6 languages. And James, their technical specialist who could hack a toaster if properly motivated. They met at a storage facility Kowalski owned, spreading blueprints of the Brenner estate across a work table that had seen better days. The property was massive, 20 acres of manicured grounds, a main house that could host 200 guests, and security that would make the Secret Service proud. We're not fighting our way in, Evan emphasized. This is infiltration, not assault. We blend, we observe, we record. When we have what we need, we extract. Clean, quiet, professional. Marcus, the former sniper, pointed to the estate's perimeter. Security cameras every 50 feet, motion sensors on all access points, and Marcus's personal detail will be sweeping constantly for threats. So we don't come in as threats. We come in as guests. Evan pulled up the profiles Rodriguez had compiled. There are 6 couples on the guest list who RSVP'd yes, but have never met the Brenners personally. Business associates, political connections, the kind of people who get invited for appearances. We pick 2 couples, intercept them before they arrive, and take their place. Elena raised an eyebrow. Intercept how? We're not kidnapping wedding guests. We're convincing them that attending would be a bad idea. Evan allowed himself a cold smile. Flat tire, food poisoning, family emergency, whatever it takes to keep them home. Then we use their invitations to walk right through the front door. The plan was risky, relying on timing and luck in equal measure. But it was also their best shot at getting close to Caruso's lawyer without triggering Marcus's security protocols. And Evan had learned long ago that sometimes the boldest move was the safest one, because nobody expected you to be that brazen. James handled the technical aspects, creating fake IDs that matched the couples they'd be replacing. Elena worked on mannerisms and backstory, drilling everyone on the details that would make their cover convincing. Marcus scouted the venue, identifying exit routes and defensive positions in case things went sideways, and Evan prepared himself mentally for what was coming. This wasn't combat. This was infiltration, manipulation, social engineering, a different kind of warfare, one that required him to be charming instead of lethal. He wasn't sure which made him more uncomfortable. The night before the wedding, Morrison pulled Evan aside. I got the custody evaluation results. Evan's heart stopped. And? Mixed. The psychologist says Sophie is traumatized but bonded strongly to you. Recommends reunification but with therapy and monitoring. Morrison's expression was cautious. The problem is Marcus's lawyers are spinning the trauma angle, saying you exposed her to violence, that she witnessed you kill multiple people, that the psychological damage is your fault. She witnessed me protecting her from the men Marcus sent. That's not the same thing. Legally, it might be. The judge is concerned. There's a hearing scheduled for the day after tomorrow. You need to be there, need to testify, need to convince her that Sophie belongs with you. Morrison's voice softened. But Evan, if this wedding operation goes wrong, if you're arrested or implicated in anything illegal, that hearing becomes automatic. You'll lose custody permanently. Then I won't get caught. That's not as reassuring as you think it is. Morrison handed him a folder. This is everything I can give you without compromising my position. Security layout, guest list with annotations, and a recording device that's small enough to hide but good enough to hold up in court. Use it wisely. The wedding day arrived with perfect weather. Sunny, 75 degrees, the kind of day that made bad deeds feel almost sacrilegious. Evan dressed in the expensive suit Elena had procured, feeling like an imposter in the tailored fabric. Beside him, Clara wore an elegant dress that made her look like she belonged among the wealthy elite, which technically she did. They decided Clara should be the one to accompany him. Her face was known in these circles, which was risky, but it also provided authenticity. People would accept her presence more readily than a complete stranger's. "Ready?" Evan asked as they approached the estate gates in a rented luxury sedan. Clara's hands were shaking slightly, but her voice was steady. "Let's finish this." The security checkpoint was professional but not paranoid. Their fake IDs passed inspection, the invitations were scanned and approved, and within minutes they were through the gates and parking among a fleet of vehicles that collectively cost more than most people earned in a lifetime. The main house was elegant chaos, guests mingling on the veranda, champagne flowing, string quartet playing something classical that Evan didn't recognize. He scanned the crowd automatically, cataloging faces, looking for threats. Marcus's security detail was obvious if you knew what to look for. 6 men in suits, positioned at strategic points, radio earpieces barely visible. And there, holding court near the bar, was Marcus Lane himself. Tall, handsome in that artificial way wealthy men achieved through personal trainers and expensive grooming. He was laughing at something a senator said, his whole demeanor projecting confidence and control. He hadn't seen them yet. Good. The longer they remained invisible, the better. "Caruso's lawyer is supposed to be by the fountain," Clara whispered, consulting the notes Rodriguez had provided. "Philip Morrison, no relation to our FBI friend. 50s, graying hair, nervous disposition. They found him exactly where predicted, standing alone and looking profoundly uncomfortable among the celebration." Evan approached casually, champagne glass in hand, the picture of a fellow guest making small talk. "Philip Morrison?" "Evan Turner. I was a friend of Vincent Caruso's." Morrison's face went white. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Vincent's dead because Marcus Lane had him killed. You know it. I know it. And you're sitting on evidence that could put Marcus away for life." Evan kept his voice low, conversational. "We need that evidence." "Are you insane? Marcus is here. His people are everywhere. If he even suspects—" Morrison started to walk away, but Evan's hand on his arm stopped him. "Vincent trusted you, gave you his insurance policy because he knew you were a good man. Was he wrong?" "Vincent's dead because he trusted people," Morrison hissed. "I'm not ending up the same way. Now let go of me before I call security." Evan released him, watching the lawyer disappear into the crowd. First approach failed. They needed leverage, something to make Morrison more afraid of not helping than of crossing Marcus. Elena's voice crackled in his earpiece. They'd all been fitted with comms before arrival. "Target 2 spotted. Gregory Haynes, northwest corner, talking to a federal judge. You want me to approach?" "Negative. Let him come to us." Evan turned to Clara. "We need to make Marcus nervous, make him do something stupid that his lawyer has to respond to." "And how do we do that?" Evan smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "We let him see us." They moved through the crowd deliberately, making no effort to hide. Evan knew the exact moment Marcus spotted them, saw the man's face transform from jovial to furious in an instant. Marcus said something sharp to his security chief, who immediately spoke into his radio. Within seconds, 2 security guards were approaching. "Sir, ma'am, I'm going to have to ask you to leave." "On what grounds?" Clara's voice carried just enough to draw attention from nearby guests. "We're invited guests." "You're trespassing. Mr. Lane doesn't want you here." "Mr. Lane doesn't own this property. The Brenners do. And unless they're asking us to leave, we're staying." Evan kept his voice calm but firm. People were watching now, phones probably recording. Perfect. Marcus himself strode over, his smile sharp as broken glass. "Turner, didn't expect to see you here. Thought you'd be busy trying to get your daughter back from foster care." The jab landed, but Evan didn't react. "Thought you'd be busy preparing for your trial. Multiple counts of conspiracy to commit murder tends to require a good defense strategy." "Is that what you think happened? That I sent men to kill you?" Marcus laughed, and it sounded genuine. "I sent contractors to retrieve my wife and daughter from a dangerous situation. You're the one who turned it into a massacre. 12 men dead because you couldn't control your violent impulses. 12 men dead because they broke into a private residence with lethal intent. Evan was aware of the crowd forming around them. A phone's definitely recording now. Good. Let the public see this. But you already know that, Marcus, just like you know about Vincent Caruso, about the bribes to District Attorney Chambers, about all the other crimes you've spent years covering up. Marcus's smile never wavered, but his eyes went cold. Careful, Turner. Slander is a serious accusation, and my lawyers are very good at making accusations disappear. Speaking of lawyers, where's Gregory Haynes? I'd love to ask him about attorney-client privilege, specifically whether it applies when the client is actively committing crimes. Evan raised his voice slightly. Or maybe we should ask Philip Morrison about Vincent Caruso's insurance policy, the one documenting all of your criminal activities. He saw it. The brief flicker of fear in Marcus's eyes before the mask reasserted itself. Morrison's name, Caruso's insurance policy. Marcus hadn't known Evan was aware of those details, which meant there was a leak in his organization, or the information was more accessible than he'd thought. Security, Marcus said quietly. Remove these people. Now. But before the guards could move, a new voice cut through the tension. Is there a problem here? Gregory Haynes had arrived, drawn by the commotion. Up close, the legendary lawyer looked exactly like his reputation, silver-haired, impeccably dressed, with eyes that calculated angles and advantages with terrifying speed. No problem, Marcus said smoothly. Just some uninvited guests who are leaving. Actually, Mr. Haynes, I was hoping to speak with you. Evan pulled out his phone, where James had loaded a particularly damning recording. I have audio of you discussing witness intimidation with one of the men who attacked the beach house. Before he died, he was very talkative about who hired Aegis Solutions and how the legal strategy was designed to protect Marcus no matter what. It was a bluff. They had no such recording, but Haynes didn't know that, and the flicker of uncertainty in his expression was all the confirmation Evan needed. That's impossible. There's no such recording. Isn't there? Because I'm looking at a transcript right now. Your voice, discussing how to discredit Clara's testimony, how to make the dead contractors look like victims, how to ensure District Attorney Chambers buried any evidence that pointed to Marcus. Evan met Haynes's eyes. How much of that is attorney-client privilege, and how much is conspiracy to obstruct justice? Haynes looked at Marcus, who was no longer smiling. The mask had cracked, revealing the rage underneath. This is harassment. I want them arrested. On what charge? Clara stepped forward, her voice carrying across the gathered crowd. Telling the truth? Marcus, everyone here knows what you are, a bully who uses money and violence to get what he wants. But you made a mistake when you came after my daughter, when you tried to hurt Evan and Sophie. Because now we're not scared anymore. We're angry, and we're not stopping until you're behind bars where you belong. The crowd was murmuring now, phones recording every word. This was exactly what Marcus hated. Public scrutiny, his reputation being challenged in front of his peers. Evan watched the calculation happening behind the man's eyes, watched him decide that the cost of making a scene was higher than the cost of letting it go. Enjoy your freedom while it lasts, Marcus said quietly, because when I'm done with you, you'll have nothing. No daughter, no reputation, no life. I'm going to destroy you so completely that people will forget you ever existed. You're welcome to try. Evan's voice was ice. But fair warning, every person you've bribed, every crime you've committed, every skeleton you've hidden, I'm going to drag it all into the light. And when I'm done, you won't have enough friends or money to save you. Marcus turned and walked away, his security detail forming a protective barrier. But the damage was done. The crowd had heard everything. Phones had recorded everything. By tonight, it would be on social media, news sites, everywhere. And in the chaos of the confrontation, nobody noticed Philip Morrison slip away from the fountain and disappear into the house. Elena's voice in Evan's earpiece. Morrison's moving. Second floor, east wing. I'm following. Evan and Clara extracted themselves from the crowd, making their way inside. The house was massive, and finding one lawyer in the maze of rooms would be impossible without guidance. Fortunately, Elena was very good at her job. They found Morrison in a study, frantically making a phone call. He looked up as they entered, his face a mask of terror. I'm calling the police. Good. Call them. Tell them you have evidence of Marcus Lane's crimes and you're ready to turn it over. Evan closed the door behind them. Or keep protecting a murderer and spend the rest of your life wondering when he'll decide you're a liability. Morrison's hand was shaking so badly, he almost dropped the phone. You don't understand. Marcus has people everywhere. Police, judges, prosecutors. I turn over that evidence. I'm dead within a week. Then we protect you. FBI protection, witness security, everything you need to stay alive. Clara moved closer, her voice gentle. Vincent Caruso trusted you with his legacy. Honor that trust. Help us stop the man who killed him. Vincent's dead because he trusted people. Vincent's dead because Marcus Lane is a monster who kills anyone who threatens him, Evan said flatly. But here's the thing, Morrison, you're already a threat. Marcus knows you have that evidence. The only reason you're alive is because he hasn't figured out how to kill you without drawing attention. But after today, after this scene, he's going to move fast. You've got maybe 24 hours before he decides the risk is worth it. Morrison sank into a chair, the phone forgotten. What do you want from me? The evidence. All of it. We give it to the FBI, they build a case, Marcus goes away forever. You testify with immunity, get relocated, start a new life somewhere Marcus can't reach you. And if I say no? Evan pulled out the recording device Morrison had given him. Then I tell every media outlet that Philip Morrison is sitting on evidence of multiple murders and refusing to release it. Make you famous, make you visible, make it impossible for Marcus to touch you without everyone knowing exactly who did it. It was a calculated risk. Exposing Morrison could either protect him through visibility or paint an even bigger target on his back. But Morrison didn't know which, and the uncertainty was enough. The evidence is in a safe deposit box, Bank of America, downtown branch, box 77743. Morrison pulled a key from his pocket with shaking hands. There's a password too, Vincent's daughter's birthday, October 15th, 1995. Evan took the key, feeling its weight like a promise. You did the right thing. Did I? Because right now it feels like I just signed my death warrant. No, Clara said softly. You just signed Marcus's. They left Morrison in the study and made their way back through the house. The wedding was continuing, though there was a tension in the air now, a sense that something fundamental had shifted. Marcus was nowhere to be seen, probably regrouping, planning his next move. In the parking lot, Marcus the sniper was waiting by their car. Got everything? Got the key and location. We need to move fast. Marcus is going to figure out what happened. Evan climbed into the driver's seat, already planning the route to downtown. James, you're on security footage. Make sure there's no record of us at the bank. Already working on it, James's voice crackled through the comm. But Turner, you need to see this. Evan's phone buzzed with an incoming video. He opened it and felt his blood run cold. It was Sophie, leaving school with Mrs. Chen. And in the background, barely visible, was a black SUV that Evan recognized, the same type Marcus's security used. They're watching her, he said quietly. Marcus knows we got to Morrison. He's making sure we know he can reach Sophie anytime he wants. Clara's hand found his shoulder. Then we end this. Today. We get that evidence, we give it to Morrison, and we bury Marcus so deep he never sees daylight again. The bank was closing in 40 minutes. They had just enough time if traffic cooperated and nothing went wrong. Evan pushed the sedan harder than was safe, weaving through afternoon traffic with the kind of precision that came from years of high-speed extractions. They made it with 12 minutes to spare. The bank manager was initially reluctant to provide access. Morrison wasn't present, and the key alone wasn't sufficient. But Clara's credentials as a high-profile customer and Elena's flawless impersonation of Morrison's legal assistant convinced him to make an exception. Box 77743 contained a single thumb drive and a handwritten note from Vincent Caruso. If you're reading this, I'm dead. Make it count. James copied the drive's contents in the parking lot, his laptop running encryption-breaking software that would have made the NSA jealous. Got it. And holy shit, guys, this is everything. Financial records going back 10 years, audio recordings of Marcus ordering hits, photos of him meeting with known criminals. This doesn't just bury him. It buries half the city's power structure. Send copies to Morrison, every major news outlet, and post it online where it can't be taken down. Evan ordered. Make it impossible to suppress. Already on it. Give me 30 minutes. They drove to the FBI field office, where Morrison was waiting with a team of federal prosecutors. The look on her face when she saw the evidence was something between shock and vindication. This is bigger than Marcus Lane, she said, scrolling through files. This is RICO violations, multiple homicides, corruption charges against 3 sitting judges and a district attorney. Turner, you just handed us the case of the decade. I just want my daughter back. Morrison looked up at him, and her expression softened. The custody hearing is tomorrow morning. With this evidence, with Marcus about to be arrested, I think you've got a very strong case. But Evan, you need to understand, Sophie went through trauma, real trauma. Getting custody back is just the first step. She's going to need therapy, time, support. I know, and I'll give her whatever she needs. But she needs her father too. She needs to know I didn't abandon her. You didn't abandon her. You protected her. There's a difference. Morrison handed him a folder. This is the custody evaluation, unredacted. The psychologist's recommendation is for immediate reunification with therapeutic oversight. Show this to the judge tomorrow. Tell your story. You'll get her back. That night, Evan couldn't sleep. He stayed up watching the news as the story broke. Marcus Lane's empire collapsing in real time. Arrests were happening across the city. District Attorney Chambers taken into custody. 3 judges removed from the bench. Marcus himself was cornered in his penthouse, refusing to surrender, negotiating with SWAT teams through his lawyers. It was everything Evan had wanted, Marcus's destruction, complete and public. But it felt hollow without Sophie beside him. Clara found him on the safe house porch at 3 a.m., staring at nothing. Couldn't sleep either? Keep thinking about tomorrow. What if the judge doesn't believe me? What if she thinks Sophie's better off without me? Then the judge is an idiot, but she's not going to think that, because you're going to walk in there and tell the truth, that you're a father who would do anything to protect his daughter, including kill 12 men who threatened her. Clara sat beside him. That's not something to be ashamed of, Evan. That's something to be proud of. Sophie looked at me like I was a monster. Sophie looked at you like you were her father doing something terrible but necessary. There's a difference. And kids are resilient. They understand more than we give them credit for. Claire's voice was gentle. Lila asked me yesterday if you were a bad man. You know what I told her? What? I told her you were the best man I'd ever met, that you did scary things to keep us safe, that sometimes good people have to do hard things, and that doesn't make them bad. It makes them heroes. Clara smiled. She asked if she could draw you a picture, said she wanted to give it to you when she saw you again, to say thank you. Evan felt his throat tighten. I don't feel like a hero. Heroes never do. That's what makes them heroes. The custody hearing started at 9 a.m. in a courthouse that smelled of old wood and broken dreams. Evan sat at the defendant's table, because that's what he was now, a defendant fighting to prove he deserved his own daughter, and watched the judge review his file. Judge Patricia Reeves, no relation to his former captain, was in her 60s, with steel gray hair and eyes that had seen every kind of family tragedy imaginable. She looked at Evan over her reading glasses, and he couldn't tell if she saw a protector or a killer. Mr. Turner, I've reviewed the custody evaluation, the incident reports, and the evidence regarding Marcus Lane's criminal enterprise. I've also watched the footage from the beach house. She set down the file. 12 men dead. Your daughter witnessed the aftermath. How do you justify exposing her to that level of violence? Evan stood, his voice steady despite the fear coursing through him. I don't justify it, Your Honor. I regret that Sophie had to experience that trauma. But those men came to kill me and kidnap Clara Lane and her daughter. I had seconds to make a choice. Let them succeed or stop them. I chose to protect the people in my care. By killing 12 people. By defending lives against lethal force. Your Honor, I was a soldier before I was a father. I've seen violence that would give most people nightmares. And I spent 10 years trying to leave that behind, trying to be just a regular dad with a regular life. But when Marcus Lane threatened my daughter, when his men broke into that house with guns and explosives, I became what I was trained to be, a protector. Not because I wanted to, but because I had to. Judge Reeves was quiet for a moment. The evaluation says Sophie is deeply bonded to you, that she's traumatized by separation more than by what she witnessed. Is that accurate? Sophie is my whole world. She's been with me every day of her life since her mother died in childbirth. We're not just father and daughter, we're a team, a unit. Taking her from me doesn't protect her. It destroys the one stable thing in her life. And what happens the next time someone threatens you? Do you kill them too? I hope there is no next time. But Your Honor, if someone threatens my daughter, if they come at her with violent intent, then yes, I will do whatever is necessary to protect her, just like any parent would. Most parents don't have your skill set. No, they don't. And most parents haven't had to make the choices I've made. But that skill set is also why Sophie is alive. Why Clara Lane and her daughter are alive. Why 43 hostages in Istanbul came home instead of in body bags. Evan's voice was firm. I'm not a perfect father. I've made mistakes. But I love my daughter more than anything in this world, and I will never stop fighting to keep her safe. Judge Reeves looked at him for a long moment, then at the files, then back at him. Mr. Turner, this court recognizes that you acted in defense of yourself and others. The evidence clearly shows that Marcus Lane orchestrated an assault on that beach house with lethal intent. However, this court also recognizes that Sophie experienced significant trauma. Evan's heart was hammering so hard he could barely hear over it. Therefore, custody is restored to you, effective immediately. However, Sophie will undergo trauma counseling twice a week for the next 6 months, and you will participate in family therapy sessions. Additionally, Child Services will conduct monthly check-ins to ensure Sophie's well-being. Any failure to comply will result in immediate review of this custody arrangement. Do you understand? Yes, Your Honor. Thank you. Don't thank me, Mr. Turner. Just be the father Sophie needs. Court is adjourned. Evan stood there for a moment, not quite believing it. After everything, the violence, the fear, the legal battles, he was getting Sophie back. Today. Now. Mrs. Chen was waiting outside the courthouse with Sophie. The moment his daughter saw him, she broke free and ran, and Evan dropped to his knees to catch her. She hit him like a freight train, her small arms wrapping around his neck, her face buried in his shoulder. Daddy, Daddy, I missed you so much. I missed you too, baby, every second of every day. Evan held her tight, feeling tears stream down his face and not caring who saw. I'm so sorry you had to go through that. I'm so sorry I couldn't protect you from all of it. Sophie pulled back to look at him, her hands on his face. You did protect me. You saved me and Lila and Clara. Mrs. Chen told me what happened, how the bad men came and you stopped them. Her voice dropped to a whisper. Were you scared? Terrified. Not for me, but for you, the thought of something happening to you. Evan couldn't finish the sentence. But nothing happened, because you're the bravest daddy in the whole world. Sophie hugged him again. Can we go home now? I want to sleep in my own bed and eat your pancakes and just be normal again. Yeah, sweetheart, we can go home. They collected Clara and Lila from the safe house, and Morrison provided an escort back to Evan's apartment. The building looked exactly the same, but everything felt different. The guards were gone, the danger passed. Marcus Lane was in federal custody, denied bail, facing charges that would put him away for life. It was over. Really, truly over. That evening, after Sophie was bathed and fed and tucked into bed with her bear, Evan stood in her doorway watching her sleep. Clara appeared beside him, Lila already asleep in her arms. We should go, Clara said quietly. Let you two have your space. Stay. The word came out before Evan fully thought it through. It's late. You're both exhausted. Stay the night. Tomorrow we can figure out what comes next, but tonight, just stay. Clara looked at him, and something passed between them. Understanding, maybe, or recognition of what they'd been through together. Okay, we'll stay. They put Lila in the spare bedroom, and Clara took the couch despite Evan's protests. He tried to sleep, but couldn't, his mind still processing everything that had happened. So he made coffee and found Clara already awake in the kitchen. Can't turn your brain off either? She asked. Something like that. Evan poured 2 cups. What happens now, with you and Lila? I testify against Marcus. Help put him away for good. After that, Clara shrugged. I don't know. Start over, I guess. Figure out who I am when I'm not Mrs. Marcus Lane. or a woman in hiding. You could stay in the city. You have friends here. A life. A life Marcus destroyed. Every place I go, I'll remember what he did, what he tried to do. Clara looked at him over her coffee. But maybe that's okay. Maybe those memories are proof I survived. That we all survived. We did more than survive. We won. Evan allowed himself a small smile. Marcus is going away forever. D.A. Chambers is being prosecuted. The evidence you provided is going to reshape the city's power structure. And you got Sophie back. That's what matters most. Yeah. Evan looked toward his daughter's room. She's going to need therapy, time, but we'll get through it. We always do. Clara set down her cup. Evan, I need to say something. What you did for us, for me and Lila, I can never repay that. You could have walked away, taken Sophie and run. But you stayed, you fought, you saved us. I did what anyone would do. No, you did what heroes do, and I'll never forget that. Clara stood, moving closer. My father told me once that he knew you were special because you cried. Because despite everything you'd been through, everything you'd done, you still felt, still cared. I understand that now. She kissed him. Just briefly, just a touch of lips that carried gratitude and possibility and the beginning of something neither of them had been looking for. When she pulled back, Evan's heart was hammering for entirely different reasons than combat. Clara, don't overthink it. Don't make it complicated, she smiled. We've both been through hell. We've both got damage and trauma and healing to do. But maybe, when the dust settles, when things are normal again, we figure out what this could be. I'd like that. Me too. Clara squeezed his hand. But right now we just focus on the kids, on Sophie and Lila, on making sure they grow up feeling safe and loved. Everything else can wait. Everything else can wait, Evan agreed. 3 weeks later, Marcus Lane's trial began. It lasted 14 days, and the verdict was never in doubt. Guilty on all counts: conspiracy to commit murder, racketeering, witness tampering, corruption. The judge sentenced him to life in prison without possibility of parole. Evan watched from the gallery as Marcus was led away in chains and felt nothing. No triumph, no satisfaction, just relief that it was over. Sophie's therapy was going well. She had nightmares sometimes, woke up crying and needing reassurance that the bad men were gone. But she was laughing again, playing again, being a kid again. The psychologist said she was resilient, that with time and support she'd recover completely. Lila and Sophie had become inseparable. They had play dates twice a week, sleepovers on weekends. Clara and Evan danced around what was growing between them, both too cautious to rush, too aware of how fragile everything still was. But it was there. Possibility. Hope. The chance at something normal after so much chaos. 6 months after the beach house, Evan got a call from Rodriguez. Got something you should see. They met at a coffee shop, the same one where this had all started to accelerate. Rodriguez slid a folder across the table, and Evan opened it to find photographs of a memorial service. Echo Division members, the ones who'd survived Istanbul and scattered to the winds, gathered to honor their fallen. They wanted you to know, Rodriguez said quietly, that you're not alone, that what you did, stopping Marcus, protecting Clara and the kids, it reminded everyone what Echo stood for, protecting the innocent, standing against evil, making the hard choices. Evan looked at the photos, seeing faces he hadn't seen in 10 years, brothers in arms who'd shared the same trauma, carried the same scars. I spent so long thinking I had to leave Echo behind, that being a protector meant being a monster. You're not a monster, you never were. You were just a man doing an impossible job. Rodriguez leaned forward. Captain Reeves would be proud of what you've become, how you used everything he taught you to save lives instead of take them. I took 12 lives, to save 4. That's the math, Turner. That's what Echo was always about. Sometimes good people have to do terrible things so that innocent people can live. You made peace with that once. Time to make peace with it again. Evan closed the folder, feeling something settle in his chest. Not peace exactly, but acceptance. Understanding that he could be both. The father who made pancakes and helped with homework, and the guardian who would do violence to protect his family. He wasn't one or the other. He was both. And that was okay. That evening, Clara brought Lila over for dinner. It had become a routine, this family time that wasn't quite a family, but felt like one. Evan made spaghetti while the girls colored at the kitchen table, and Clara set the table, and for a moment everything was normal. After dinner, after the girls were in Sophie's room playing, Clara found Evan on the balcony. "You're thinking about something, I can tell. About second chances, about how we get to start over when so many people don't. We earned this second chance, fought for it, survived things that should have destroyed us." Clara took his hand. "My father used to say that life gives you exactly what you can handle. No more, no less. And if you're still standing after it all, that means you were strong enough all along. Your father was a wise man." "He was. And he'd be happy knowing his daughter found someone like you. Someone who understands that protecting the people you love isn't weakness. It's the strongest thing you can do." Evan pulled her closer, and they stood there watching the city lights, listening to their daughter's laughter drift through the open door. It wasn't perfect. There were still nightmares, still therapy sessions, still moments when the past rose up to haunt them. But it was real. It was theirs. And after everything they'd been through, that was enough. Sophie appeared at the door, Lila beside her. "Daddy, can Lila stay over tonight, please?" Evan looked at Clara, who nodded. "Sure, kiddo, but that means Clara stays too. We don't leave Lila without her mom." "Yay!" Both girls cheered and disappeared back into the bedroom. Clara raised an eyebrow. "Smooth. Using the kids to convince me to stay. Did it work?" "Maybe." She smiled. "But I'm taking the couch again." "The couch is yours. For now." They both understood what that meant, that eventually when the healing was further along, when the trauma had faded enough to make room for new beginnings, there would be no more couch, no more careful distance, just two people who'd survived hell together and chosen to build something beautiful from the ashes. But that could wait. Tonight was for being present, for appreciating what they had, for watching their daughters play without fear. Evan Turner had been a lot of things in his life: a soldier, a killer, a survivor, a father. And now maybe he was getting the chance to be something new, a man at peace with his past, present in the moment, and hopeful about the future. The Guardian had done his job. The war was over. And somehow, against all odds, everyone he'd sworn to protect had made it through alive. That was enough. That was everything. As night fell over the city, as Sophie and Lila's laughter echoed through the apartment, as Clara's hand found his in the darkness, Evan allowed himself to believe it. They were safe. They were together. They were home. And maybe, just maybe, that meant the story had a happy ending after all.